Good evening, everybody. How are we doing tonight? My name is Alan, and it's that time again. Heavy Metallurgy. I am here as usual. I wasn't here last week, so I have to say usual instead of always. But as usual, I am here with my esteemed co-host, Marty. How are you doing this week, sir?
Finer and Frog here. Good to see everybody. Good to have you back, Alan. We missed you last week. We had a good little fun time, but it's never the same without the professor. But we persevered.
You did. Y'all had a great show. I got to listen to bits and pieces of it. But yeah, fun topic, great guests. If folks missed that one, they should check it out for sure. But yes, there's no company tonight. There's no work to do. So I am back in force. And before we get into tonight's topic and tonight's guests, we will look at a few new releases for this week. Marty and I are trying to introduce this at the start of the shows just to help people keep on top of what is coming out. Let's see, just kind of a short list of a few things tonight. If I can find where I put it. Let's see, I got to skip some of these because some of these nobody's going to care about. But what have we got? One thing to point out is some lists for new releases on May 10th I'm seeing have the Black Sabbath box set listed, but that is incorrect. I double checked on Rhino's actual pre-order page, and the Black Sabbath Tony Martin set is not coming out until May 31st. So if you were out looking for that today and couldn't find it, it got pushed back a couple of weeks. So yeah, you got to wait a little bit longer before that one. I know a lot of folks are looking forward to being able to pick those Tony Martin era albums up in one place for a reasonable price. But some things that are out today. The new Riot 5 album is out, and we will have a review of that posted on Monday here on Heavy Metallurgy. Freedom Call has Silver Romance out on Steamhammer. Good power metal band there, although Silver Romance...
they're like professed to be happy power metal. They're proud of it, and
they're a little more on the happy power metal side, but not the silly power metal side. So yeah, they have a following. Let's see, there's something from Necrophagia called Moribundus Grim is out today. The big one, of course, most people have been talking about, the new 6 Feet Under, Killing for Revenge on Metal Blade, has apparently hit stores. And two others, Unleash the Archers has Phantoms out on Napalm. Phantoma out on Napalm. And this last one is surprising because I have not heard anything about it. Warlord, yes, that Warlord, has a new album out called Free Spirit Soar on High Roller, although I think it's also being licensed on other labels and other territories. I've only seen one quick review of the new Warlord, but it was extremely positive, saying that, yeah, it really harkens back to the band's kind of early 80s glory days.
Does it have Bill on it?
I don't think so. It has Mark Zonder, is the only one I know who for sure is in the project. But yeah, I'm not sure who else is in the lineup with him. I just found that one shortly before we went on live tonight. So yeah, if folks know anything about the new Warlord release, or there's others coming out today that I didn't mention that you think people would enjoy knowing about, please go ahead and post it in the chat. Let other folks figure out how they want to spend their money if they get out to the record stores this weekend. So there are some of your new releases. I'm sure people have some opinions about the new 6 Feet Under. I haven't heard anything from it, so
I previewed a couple tracks and it sucks. I mean, that band has always sucked.
It's going to be a hard sell for a lot of folks for sure, but they have their fans. I guess they wouldn't have been around this long.
Got Jack going on it. There's some good riffs, but it's so pedestrian. It's so left behind. They've been left behind, basically. Anyway, I think enough.
But yes, with those new releases taken care of, let's move on and let's get the boys out here. They've waited long enough. Who we got back there tonight, Marty?
Oh, we have our friends Darcy from 6 Strings 9 Lives. Welcome. And of course, MetalMickey, Mike from the UK and the MetalMickey channel. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for
joining us. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
Oh, we're very happy to do it. And this was a case of, for folks watching, we didn't necessarily invite them on. We just kind of got the email. It sounds like, guys, we're coming on to talk about Testament. Just tell us when to show up. It's like, absolutely. Okay, we can do that.
That's the way we like it. We're sick of hunting people down.
No, it was very fun to, just have an open email and be like, here's the topic. We're the guests. 3 weeks good. I'm like, yep, that all works just fine.
Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, we just pencil us in. We're ready.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, I blame you for that because I said suggest it to them, see how we go, and he just sort of went in with both feet and said, "This is what's happening."
See,
And then he
Mike,
sent me-
it's those crude Canadian manners. You know, the
I know,
Canadians
they're
are
so
famous for
rude.
just throwing their weight around, being bossy and obnoxious, just, kind of come in and grunt and scratch until they get their way. So, over there, y'all are used to manners and refinement and chivalry. Canada, they're just like wallowing around in beaver skins and maple syrup. It's like stone knives and bear skins.
You got me.
Beaver loincloths. I mean, it's kind of risque up there.
They're all riding wolverines and drunk on cheap beer. You can't give them a delicate operation to handle. It's just not in their case.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, and we're saying this, of course, about people who are considered one of the nicest countries and about one of the nicest guys in the nicest country, which that's what makes it funny.
No, it's great to have you guys
really,
back.
Yes, really excited, and fun topic, a band we've been meaning to talk about for a long time and just never got around to. So it was great that you guys brought them up anyway. Hey, Steve, good to see you in the chat.
Hey, Tomas. I can't say your name. I'm sorry. Hey, welcome to the channel. Lots of stuff archived for you to watch. Enjoy.
Okay, Steve pre-ordered that new Warlord. So, Steve, report back in a week or two, please, and let us know what it's like in case some folks haven't had a chance to check it out by then. But yeah, thanks to everybody who's filling in the chat. Good to see some new faces. Good to see a lot of familiar folks.
Hell yeah.
And I think a lot of folks will be excited for this one because we got a legacy band tonight. But Mike, Darcy, why were you two so excited to come talk about the Testament discography tonight? Mike, let's start with you.
Well, for me, they are a band I'm passionate about. That doesn't necessarily mean that I love everything they've done, but I am very passionate about them. And of course, you guys have got a broader listening and a broader knowledge than I have. And I do like to appear on the channel and hang out with you fellas. So I thought, well, before someone else takes it, the Testament slot, maybe try and get in there because it's not as much, it's not as much homework for me. So I can get in there. It's something I can contribute to, whereas with other things, I could well be out my depth.
Yeah, I know it's a band that you definitely like, you definitely care for. But yeah, that's cool that you're not just into every single thing. It's always a little weird when somebody professes to, give every single album in a discography 100% score. It's like, that's kind of weird. So no, we'll get some very fair critiques from Mike tonight. But Darcy, how about you? What got you so excited to join Mike in demanding to be on for Testament?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to look at that email and see how I worded that. But you know what? Just like Mike, I am super passionate about Testament. They are, between them and Overkill, they're basically my favorite North American thrash bands, put it that way. And Testament, I've been there since day one. I proudly can tell you that. I've been there since 1987 with them. And hey, and I do love hanging out with you guys. A lot of the stuff, you know what? No matter what you guys are talking about, I still tune in. A lot of it's foreign to me, but you know what? If I can add a little bit of value on Testament and, a guy who loves the band, hell, why not? So I thought, why not? Let's get on here.
Absolutely. And we're very glad, all joking aside, we're very glad you guys brought it up. And
Oh, yeah.
very glad to have you here. You're both great guests, and we always have a great time hanging out with you.
Absolutely.
So, Marty, I've been talking a lot. Let's give you a chance to get a word in here. What is your relationship or thoughts on Testament?
Well, Testament for me is one of those high school acquisitions. I got the Legacy right around the time it came out, and I mean, it blew me away. It still blows me away. I put that record on, I still get the little chill, the little, goose skin or whatever you call it. This is the glory days of the thrash era where so many bands were popping up, but so many bands had their own identity. And There is no other thrash band that really sounds like Testament. You know, Chuck Billy's voice is iconic in a way. It's he has his own identity, his own characteristic, and he changed it over the years. He started adding some death growls here and there, and he grew within his voice, and he could pull it off live. He sounds, even to this day, he sounds great. And I respect the fact, you know, the early Bay Area bands, there were a handful of them that, hey, George G, thanks, man.
Oops, sorry.
Whoops.
Yes, thank you, George. Appreciate that a lot.
Hey, George.
You rule, man. Thanks. Yeah, they're just one of those bands I just couldn't get enough of. And the first 3 albums in particular, I spun those incessantly. Just because it seemed so fresh and fun at the time, you know. But I've respected their persistence and the fact that they're still putting out good records. They're still really a good band in spite of all of the lineup changes. It seems that every time they power up, they level up a bit whenever they get someone in, like, oh, they got this badass player. Cool. How about you, Alan?
Yeah, kind of similar. Very much, you know, a high school thrash kind of band. They, while not one of the big 4, they were that very next tier right below that. So any kid that was paying much attention to heavy metal, you know, in the latest 80s and early 90s would find Testament pretty early. And we did, even out in the sticks where I grew up. And yeah, you know, they're, you know, very much, you know, kind of a textbook definition of that, you know, US Bay Area thrash sound. And they've been pretty consistent with that, much more so than actually a lot of the bands in the big 4 and other bands that were their peers, maybe on the second tier also. So we'll talk about it. They've had a few changes along the way, not just in lineup, but in sound, but they never deviated as much as a lot of the other thrash bands did. When you look through their catalog compared to, you know, Anthrax's, Megadeth's, Metallica's, Testament really stayed the course with thrash, much more so than many other bands. And I think that has paid off nicely for them in the long run. No, they, you know, never had the same kind of success as, you know, Metallica or Megadeth. But they also have, you know, a very dedicated fan base that has a really solid body of work to listen to, rather than some peaks and valleys that kind of go all over the place stylistically sometimes. So yeah, a consistent band, as you said, Marty. They're got a who's who of, you know, just metal royalty in the lineup. It's just kind of a question of who's going to show up for which given album at any time, which we'll try to keep tabs on that a little bit as we go through the catalog tonight.
You want to do a really quick history thing real quick?
If you've got one pulled up, go right ahead. Absolutely.
For those not in the loop, Testament is an American thrash metal band from Berkeley, California, formed in 1983 under the name Legacy, which actually that had Steve Souza from Exodus singing on the Legacy demo. Testament is often credited as one of the most popular and influential bands of the thrash metal scene, as well as one of the leaders of the second wave of the genre of the late 80s, and they are considered a significant member of the so-called Big Six of the Bay Area thrash metal, alongside Exodus, Death Angel, Laz Rocket, Forbidden, and Violence. By the time they changed their name from Legacy to Testament in 1986, the band had assumed a stable lineup which included Chuck Billy, Eric Peterson, Alex Skolnick, and 2 other founding members, bassist Greg Christian and drummer Louis Clemente. They were one of the early thrash metal bands assigned to a major label, Atlantic Records, through which they released the band's first 6 studio albums. Their first 3 studio albums, The Legacy, New Order, Practice What You Preach, cemented Testament's reputation as one of the most successful thrash metal bands, with the latter becoming their first to enter the top 100 on the Billboard 200 chart. So there you go. They got in at the right time, in the right place. They got on a major label because everybody wanted a Metallica. And thanks to their talent, their uniqueness, and the push and MTV, they got enough sales to solidify their career. It's why they're still putting out records, because enough people cared back in the day, I think. Yeah. I mean, what do you think? A band like Testament today coming out, putting out The Legacy, would it have the same impact if it came out with a modern shine and blast beats and growls on it, like it more than likely would if it came out today? Probably not.
No. definitely not.
Hey, what's up, Phil?
Alan, good point though on comparing like Testament's discography to, you know, the likes of Metallica, Megadeth, where they strayed, you know, way further left or right, you know, and Overkill is another one that didn't stray very far. And you know, and they tried things, and we'll talk about, the death growls, things like that too. And, you know, with like a band like Overkill, maybe a little bit on the groove side in the 90s, they tried that. It didn't really work. They had to kind of reset. And I think a lot of these bands, and as we announce the years that these came out and things, there'll be kind of that pocket of 2008, 2010, where a lot of these thrash bands kind of reset and really, you know, kind of the turning point to still building a stable career and still being relevant to this day.
Agreed.
Yep, there's definitely parallels between a lot of those bands like Testament and Overkill and others. You're absolutely right, Darcy.
Yeah. And now that Slayer's done and out, who takes in that fourth position? Is it Exodus or is it Testament?
Or is it Overkill?
I would say I would go with Testament myself. I mean, I know a lot of people will pick Exodus because
they're the first.
They just would, but I'm picking Testament all the way.
Exodus support Testament when they came over here, so they're just not as big a band in the UK. Testament are a big band in the UK. I think they're probably a bigger band over here than they are in America.
I was going to ask you that question. You and I talked about this a little bit when we talked about Zentrix. Why do you think Testament had such an impact on the UK? What was it about them?
I think for the start, the coverage in the magazine was just where it needed to be, because a band like Sepultura got they got overexposure really, and that turned me off them for a while, and it turned some of my friends off them. They were in every magazine every week, but Testament, whoever was in charge of their promotion and whatever, I think they just got the balance spot on. And in fact, you were always left sort of wishing they were in a little bit more. They kept you hungry, which in show business, keeping the audience hungry for more is the secret. And also with Metallica being the benchmark back then, Testament were just that bit more aggressive. But also Chuck Billy was very audible with his lyrics and stuff like that. So it wasn't straying too far for, into too extreme a style like some other bands. And, for a time back in the 80s, Testament were like, they were bordering on mainstream over here for a little while, because even like I could get a taxi home from a night out and the fucking taxi driver will be playing the New Order, and you're like, hang on a minute, mate. Oh yeah, I like this, and I also like Guns N' Roses, and it was amazing to us, but that's just it was a very brief time, and a lot of people didn't even wait around for Practice What You Preach to come out. But there was a time where they couldn't do any wrong in this country, and spread out way more than you would possibly imagine. I think.
Well, I think part of that is because Chuck Billy could actually sing. He was a much better singer than James Hetfield.
Yeah,
maybe not as good of a singer as Joey Belladonna, but he had a melodious tune and he had power behind it, and he could scream really well. He kind of checked all the boxes which you want in a higher level thrash band.
Yeah.
But all right. We have some albums to get through. Who wants to go first? Mike, you're up. Why don't you start? I asked, and I'm gonna make you go first. We're gonna start with their debut album that came out in 1987 called The Legacy.
Yeah.
Debut album comes out on Atlantic Records. That's what the status of thrash was. Metallica, Anthrax, all those big bands that got signed, they were going to pick up all the scraps. All the other labels were. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
to me, this is just a masterpiece. I got turned onto this in the summer of '88. I remember I was one of these kids that I would pester people for albums if I heard, even if they weren't necessarily out of my friendship group. If I heard that some kid had an album that I really wanted, I was so sort of driven to try and get hold of it. I would put myself out there in knock on people's doors, and that way maybe my friends would be like, "Oh, I hardly know that guy. I'm not going to ask him for it." I'd be like, "Yeah," and I know that would be the sensible thing to do. But I was so desperate for more music and just consuming it all, and I would put myself out there and just get albums, and not give a shit about sort of, being a bit of a pest. And I somehow got hold of. I remember the lad said to me, "You can lend this one because the new order had just come out." He was adamant I wasn't lending that one, so I lent the Legacy, and it just blew me away from the world tour. It's like there's so much atmosphere on there on that album with the production, and to me it's the perfect thrash album. It's a perfect album, full stop. There's not any aspect of it that I would edit out or improve or anything. And I think Zetro's lyrics on there were fantastic, and the way that they were structured, obviously with him in mind, made Chuck Billy do a few vocal acrobatics that he probably wasn't entirely comfortable with, but he'd done an excellent job. And I feel like that was the only album we kind of got that performance from him. I feel like he's tried to make his life easier as time's gone on, but that for me is there's a lot of sort of mid-level vocals, and he's happy to dip into the slightly guttural ones back then and the shrieky high vocals, and it's just fantastic. There's not a dull second on it for me. 10 out of 10, the highest sort of mark I give any album.
Yeah.
It's your number one?
That is my number one, yeah. I should have said that, yeah.
I assumed. I mean, that's the way the conversation was going. It's obvious it's your number one for sure. All right. Good start, Darcy.
Well, Mike held up the OG. I got the OG cassette. I remember when I bought this little place called Tramps way back in 1987. So this is my number one, the Legacy. This not only is this my number one thrash debut of all times, it's one of my highest rated albums in my whole collection. I would say right up there with like an album like Accept, Restless and Wild. It just means that much to me. There is not a moment of weakness on this album. Mike had mentioned Zetro's lyrics, which he pretty much co-wrote, or he has writing credits on at least, I think 6 out of 9 of these tracks. And yeah, for sure, Chuck adapted very well, but this is the high watermark. They have songs that kind of come close to this, and maybe on the next couple that we talk about, but those lyrics are remarkable, which leads me into thanking. I need to thank Zetro for going to Exodus, first of all. But I think, and a little left field, I think he's held back in Exodus as far as like Gary Holt and some of the ridiculous lyrics they actually come up with. They have some great music, but anyways, number one, always, I can't see this ever being knocked off that number one spot. It just, I don't know, it just is so good. And no band had a secret weapon like Alex Skolnick. And what I mean by that is no band had those, like just the little guitar nuances that go on in here when you're just closing your eyes and listening. And we'll talk about Eric Peterson in the future, but what band had an Alex Skolnick, you know what I mean? But yeah,
Not
number
many.
one. Number one for sure.
That is one thing. Alex Skolnick was kind of the secret weapon. He had such a lively guitar playing style, and it was kind of atypical. He was a shredder, but he had so much more life and interesting things that he would do instead of just following pentatonics or whatever. It was, I don't know. Great guitar player. Alan.
Yeah, we didn't touch on Alex until this, but yeah, just, could shred, had the little bit, the classical influence worked in, never to the point where it seemed, pretentious or overbearing, but definitely, like you said, Marty gave it, it was kind of, this extra just little dose of class where you could tell he was a cut above.
He seemed to know what the song needed.
Knew what the song needed, knew how to deliver it, always sounded very effortless, always fit in just perfect. With this album, now for me, I'm a couple of years younger than y'all, so I did not, get this when it came out. I wasn't quite into metal yet. So I had to work backwards to this. And for whatever reason, this album was a little bit hard to find by the time I was looking for Testament albums. So I had already gotten, 2 or 3 other, Testament records before this one. So I didn't have quite the same long-term history with it that y'all did. I'm thinking I found this album finally in a used store. It was probably in 1993, almost certainly. So, and by that point, yes, everything up through the Ritual had already come out. So this album, while I liked it, I didn't necessarily latch onto it immediately like y'all did, simply because in 1993, metal be crazy and all kinds of other things were going on. I had already heard a lot of thrash. Thrash was already kind of phasing out. So it was kind of a weird time to get introduced to this record. And as such, it took, it was much longer before, I really warmed up to it and clicked to it. It's really just, the last few times I've revisited it that it's kind of ratcheted up from like, okay, that's good, very good, to like, no, this really does deserve to be in that conversation for, top thrash albums of the era.
Of the U.S. anyway. Top U.S. thrash album.
If we want to stick, yeah, we can avoid some debates and keep it to the U.S. scene tonight. Fair.
You break it the whole world, it makes it, it pushes it down the list a bit for me. But anyway.
We'll have to have that conversation, but that's for another night. Yep. One thing that really impresses me about this album, and I agree with Mike and Darcy's assessments of it, but one thing I would add is the songs on here, to me, they feel like, they have this, they're really pushing, they have this almost manic energy about them. And it's, to me, it strikes me as the band almost knows they're a little bit late to the table, even though they've been on the Bay Area scene as the legacy and all of that. Metallica had an album out, in the tail end of '83, Megadeth and, Slayer and these other bands, they're releasing like their 3rd album around 1987. And Testament is just getting to the big boy table. And it almost seems to me like there's a real urgency in these tracks. They give them this extra push of energy, just this extra force to really go over the top, not just of the wall, but of the entire thrash scene, that they want to make sure they catch up, that they're not left behind, so that they are really, really pushing this material, putting on their A game so that they can try to secure a place there. And they do. The track list is loaded. It's full of classics. It opens great with Over the Wall. Curse of the Legions of Death is amazing. Apocalyptic City, of course, is amazing. Great set of tracks. Raging Waters is one I like a ton. So yeah, you can't really fault it. For me, I'm ranking it as my number 2 in Testament's catalog. And the only reason it's number 2 is, again, I don't have the sentimental attachment to it that I do a couple of the other albums. It still beats most of the albums I have more of an attachment to, but I am going to put it in 2nd place, although I completely understand, for almost anyone, it's going to be number 1, and I wouldn't argue that. But for me, I'll put it as a close 2nd. Marty, what's your take on the legacy?
All right. Well, it's funny, out of all these albums, this is my least amount of notes. It's just, I almost don't know what to say about this record. The thing that's interesting to me is you listen to bands that were surrounding them. Listen to Metallica's early output, their first album, Kill 'Em All. It's great. It's very immature. has an immature quality to some of the music. You listen to another band like Exodus, Bonded by Blood. Many consider that to be the first thrash album and also one of the best. And I like it, but it's got an immature quality to it. I listened to The Legacy, and the music does not come off as mature. It sounds like guys that know what they're doing. The songs are very well written. Each song goes in an interesting direction. It has some twists and turns within the composition of the song, of the track, that I don't expect. But they do it in a very fluid motion. There's no choppy start-stop stuff. It's very well put. Each song is its own story put together very well with a very good singer and a guitar player that really knows how to highlight a song without getting gross about it. There's some shredders, they're wanking all over themselves. This here is very well composed. Everything is in line and where it needs to be. And each song has a hook. It's usually the chorus. Favorites for me, Alone in the Dark. I love how Chuck goes super kind of evil sounding with that. The verse lines in there. Do or Die. It's kind of a deeper cut on the album, but it's a little faster, a little more aggressive. Apocalyptic City. I mean, what a raging and epic closing track. I mean, it's got a really interesting melodic buildup in the intro, and they carry it through. No, that's actually Raging Waters. They do that, but Apocalyptic City, it's kind of an awesome journey like you want. It starts off kind of barren and builds, and it's so good. Raging Waters is the one. Great atypical opening riff, melody line that carries over to the pre-chorus. The Haunting. There isn't a bad song on this. If I had to pick a song that I like the least, it might be Burn Offerings, and that's not because I don't like the song. If I had to pick one, that would be the one that would be at the end. But it's my number one, and it's one of the best, probably top 5 U.S. thrash metal albums, 100%. It's a young band starting off that has their shit together. It doesn't sound like, if this was only a little bit more mature here and there. No. The weakest link that I'm going to go off on a bit as we go is the drummer, Louis Clemente or Clementa, or however you say his name. He gets the job done. His drum beats are very pedestrian. And as the band goes forward and starts to work in more speed, you can see his limitations. And does he sink the ship? He doesn't. He never does. But it's funny, earlier in the week, I sent Mike a clip. I'm like, my God, look at this first track. Louis he's struggling. He's like off, and he's playing as fast as he can. It looks like he's dying. I'm like, God.
He is, but to me, that's the appeal. For me, right, spoiler alert, he's my favorite Testament drummer, because you're right, he doesn't let the side down.
Yeah.
But he's limited.
Very limited.
But I like that, only just being able to, stop the wheels from falling off approach to things. And I'll be able to talk about other drummers later on, why I don't favor them over Louis. But for me, them songs are perfect as they are. He does that basic D beat, 1 foot on the bass drum. And to be honest, it's only as you get older and 35 years into the album that, and we've heard lots of other drummers, but were you listening back in 87, 88 and saying, oh, we could do it another couple of double pedals on that and things like that?
This is all an older brain after processing years of drum evolution. That's 100% great point. He sounds to me like a drummer that came from an AC/DC cover band, because he has an AC/DC feel, no frills, hold it down, hold down the fort. And when they start fucking around a little bit, that's where later on for me, they get some better drummers in. Like when they got Lombardo on some of these, he's really throwing some tasty shit in there. It's like, wow, he really spiced this song up a lot. But anyway, we'll get there when we get there. But good point on that. When I was a kid, I didn't think shit about nothing about drums,
No.
Who was fast or who was slow. I probably thought he was amazing then, but years and years of being bombarded by anomalies, my rhythmic anomalies. It's easy to go back with hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we all got that in. Number 2 for Alan, number 1 for the rest of us. That leads us to 1988's The New Order. Mike.
I mean, I absolutely love the production on the Legacy, but then they come with a different production, a sort of bigger, beefier production.
It's the Peace Cells. It's the Peace Cells production that all the big thrash albums got.
I mean, somehow it's better and bigger production than the Legacy. It absolutely is the right sound for these songs. It's my number 2, and it was nearly my number 4, but I decided to make it my number 2. The reason is, to me, this is a 6-song album. You've got A Day of Reckoning, which is it's a step down in quality from everything else. It sounds like it would be more at home on Souls of Black, that song. There's a lot of lyrics goes on before they even mention the phrase A Day of Reckoning. That's right at the end of the song, so you feel a bit lost through the song. It just sort of goes along. There's not a lot of in the way of repetition. But I mean, you know, Eating Inhabitants and The New Order, Trial by Fire. Trial by Fire is maybe the other weak one, but it's not, just comparatively speaking. Into the Pit, I mean, forget Caught in a Mosh as far as mosh and pit songs go. Into the Pit just fucking destroys that.
Yeah.
Then you've got Hypnosis, which is another bit of noodling. Disciples of the What just kills, total fucking beast. And then The Preacher. A Day of Reckoning, like I say, is kind of filler to me. That would be more at home on Souls of Black. And Musical Death of Dirge. When you take out the filler and the instrumentals and the fact that it's only a short album, you're talking a little over 20 minutes of music. And I almost dropped it a few places for that reason. But that 20 minutes of music's fucking phenomenal. Those albums are some of the best songs in metal, full stop. And I just love how Chuck Billy's still... You don't get as many shrieks in this album as you did on the Legacy, but I think he uses... less is more, I think, with the death growls with Testament, and it's awesome when you know he's coming up to say preach and stuff like that, but he doesn't overdo it. You really love it when he does it. You savor those little parts, and you know we'll talk about how they changed the style in the future after this. But for me, this album is just. It's just awesome. I just wish there was... I can't understand why they didn't put Reign of Terror on there. And they had other songs that wasn't used as well, which we'll talk about later on. But the very fact that those 6 songs that I do love, they're just phenomenal. The world beaters, so even though it's very short.
35 minutes, 24 seconds for the LP version. The CD and the cassette have Nobody's Fault, the Aerosmith cover added. So yeah, they were, in my understanding, they were being annoyed by the record label to hurry up and get another album out. So they rushed it. That's why there's 2 instrumentals with no lyrics on, and then a cover to pad out the CD and the tape. But anyway, Darcy.
Well,
hey, 91 people, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's good to see everyone.
The New Order is my number 3. What's killer on here is killer, right? Mike touched on it, like Disciples of the Watch. I just cannot get enough of that track, or The Preacher. And the first video I ever saw on Canada's Much Music was Trial by Fire, and I love the start of that song. And when Chuck's he says, check, check, and then it just barrels into the song. You can't help but just mosh around your room or whatever. I just love that one. But I am there is some, you can tell they tried to just get enough minutes on this baby to get it out, but absolutely thrasher piece. It's right up there. It's my number 3, and I'll tell you shortly, why it's my number 3, because there's just one other one that I like a little better. But yeah, just killer top to bottom. What else can I tell you about this? And I love Alex on here, but I'm also going to tell you, I am a big Eric Peterson fan. He, for all intents and purposes, him and Chuck really are the driving force behind the full band, business wise, and, just getting the band going. And good to have Alex back in the band, but don't forget about Eric Peterson. He is definitely a real riff master.
Oh, good
for
songwriter.
sure. So
Yeah.
So there's my number 3, The New Order.
All right, Alan, how about you? You're muted.
Thank you. I've got a very different take on this album. I've never really gotten into it much. I don't connect with this one. This was another one for me that was a pain to track down. I don't know why. It shouldn't have been, but just no one had it. So I got it kind of basically at the point where I wasn't really that interested in thrash by the time I got it. There's death metal and power metal and all this other stuff was doing good. And it's like, yeah, I never did get that. I'll go ahead and get it. So I was already in the wrong frame of mind when I finally found it. And yeah, it's an incredibly short album. Like you said, Marty, the story's always been that, they were basically kind of pushed back into the studio, crank out another album. And to me, it always felt like they used all the good stuff on the first album and kind of went, it's that classic story where you have your whole life to write the first album. And in this case, you had less than a year to write the second album. And there are some good songs on it for sure. I'm not saying it's trash. Trial by Fire, Disciple of the Watch is really good. There's one other one here that I like a lot. Into the Pit, Mike mentioned it before, are really good. But, it's 7 songs with 2 instrumentals. It's barely 35 minutes. It's 9 songs, same as The Legacy, but it's 3.5 minutes shorter. So, they're cutting some corners putting this together for sure.
6 minutes of instrumental.
6 minutes of instrumental. Fuck an Aerosmith cover. If you want to be an OG Bay Area thrash band, you don't cover Aerosmith. You should be chasing them down Sunset Boulevard trying to ram your guitar up their ass, not covering their frickin' songs. I'm sorry, I really have never liked Aerosmith.
Me either.
Whatsoever.
Not a fan.
I had the cassette copy, but I honestly don't remember if mine had the Aerosmith cover. It doesn't matter because, this just has never really been the album for me.
It's on there.
It is okay. I guess I had it. I honestly don't remember it being on there. I guess I blanked that from my memory for obvious reasons. So at the end of the day, I would give this a very average grade. It's okay. It's not garbage. They still got a few decent tracks put together, but it feels thrown together. It feels like a lot of it's kind of, they didn't have time to really bring their A game to the table for me. I rank it 11th out of their 12. I would never reach for this album.
Mike's flipping a table. He's flipping a table in England right now.
I knew it was going to happen, but
he's going to take a shit and send it to you in a box.
I saw the album recently for $6 and I passed on it. I'm just like, I would never play this if I had it, even though it's got a few good songs. There's 10 other Testament albums I would listen to before this one. It's too short. It has too many mediocre songs for me personally. I get that a lot of folks love it because it's that early era of Testament. But like I said, that's not when I got into it. I got into Testament with the album that's coming up next. And for whatever reason, this one was just off the shelves and it came too late for me. It came at the wrong time and it's never really connected. So average grade, rank 11. I have no use for the New Order. I just don't. It's not the album for me. Again, it's not a crap album, but it is not my album. It's cool to hear that Mike and Darcy do like it so much. Folks in the chat have been back and forth. A lot of folks have it ranked very high. but a few other folks have said like, yeah, it's in my bottom half of the ranking too. That so folks are definitely kind of split on this one, and unfortunately, this time I'm on the opposite team from Mike and Darcy. But now let's see where Marty's at. I want to guess, Marty, you're closer to the Mike and Darcy take, which is cool.
I'm closer to it, but it's the funny thing is my opinion before this week would have been higher. I would have ranked it higher. Probably would have been my number 2. But first of all, this album peaked at 136 on the Billboard Top 200 when it came out. Which
that's something for a thrash band.
The strength of their debut album carried them so much buzz that they charted on the top 200. All right, welcome to that cavernous thrash sound. I mean, Rest in Peace is not Rest in Peace. Peace Sells is the album that I always revert to. But that too much reverb on Gar's kit was bad because he was such an amazing player. It sterilized his playing. On this, it actually kind of works. Mike is right. The reverb on this actually helped it a bit. Everything's slathered in reverb. It somehow worked. It's a rushed album, but the band fared well, constructing ambitious, powerful, and memorable tracks. 2 instrumentals, just over 6 minutes. CD and tape contain the cover to pad out the time. I will say the song "The Preacher" is fast and brutal, and Chuck is shrieking high register like a madman on here, and he also does it a bit on Nobody's Fault. He really doesn't do that much after this record. He probably realizes playing live that that's not a sustainable style register he can maintain. Favorite songs for me: The New Order, Eerie Inhabitants, and Trial by Fire. Nobody's Fault, Aerosmith cover not on the LP. Yeah, that's bullshit. They did a decent job with it, but it's like, how do you polish a turd? And I don't know, whatever. But for me, this is number 5. Number 5 for me.
Marty kind of splits the difference.
Yep. Which leads us to the 1989 album Practice What You Preach, which I will add maxed out at number 77 on the Billboard Top 200 album chart. So there you go, Mike. What did you think of Practice What You Preach?
When this was announced, I knew about this coming out in '88, and I was just so fired up the whole of '89 till it finally come out. At this time in my life, sort of '88 going into '89, my big main bands were Testament, Halloween, Anthrax, and Wasp. So I was totally psyched for this album coming out. Day one purchase, run into town, get the record. Now, admittedly, I had a shit stereo, £99 fucking piece of shit Amstrad stereo. But I came home and put this on, and I was just like, what is that wimpy shit?
Very produced. It's kind of overproduced in a way.
Well, it was recorded. It was performed live in the studio. It's just a live recording.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, it's a live recording.
It's kind of impressive.
And my disdain for it lasted about a fortnight because I was so invested in my mind. I refused to allow this to be shit. Mm-hmm. And I just worked at it and force fed it for a fortnight. And I wasn't alone. A lot of my friends were the same. Once it clicked after a fortnight, that it clicked really hard. And I've loved it ever since. And like I said before, Chuck, you looked forward to the sort of, the moments. There were very memorable moments right the way through the song, like Envy Life when he does the.
That's the first his first real elongated death growl. Foreshadowing. Yep.
Sins of Omission is a highlight for me, like a deeper cut, but it's awesome. Obviously, the title track. There's no duff ones apart from that Confusion Fusion, which is just, or whatever it's called, which is just, nonsense to finish the album. The ballad's awesome. I ended up loving all of it. It just took a little bit longer than, day one sort of thing. For me, it was, once it clicked with me, it clicked for about 25 years. It was my favorite Testament album, and as time goes on, it's now dropped to number 3, which is partly due to the amount I've played it as well. It's kind of on loop. I don't need to hear it. I still do play it a lot, but I don't need to hear it as much. But it's perfect. Once I'd got my head around the softer, less beefy sound. I love Testament just doing that thrash beat and then going into the half time and then back to the thrash beat. I could just listen to that pattern all day long. So they're still, on fire for me at this point with that album.
Right on. Number 3 for Mike. What do you think, Darcy?
That's my number 2. In 1989, there was 2 albums that never left my vehicle, and that was Practice What You Preach and Faith No More, The Real Thing. Literally never left my vehicle. I probably own 2 copies of this and had one at home or something like that. But I think Mike and I have talked about this album lots over the years. I love the thin production on this. I think it's so fitting. This is probably Louis' least shining moment on an album as far as his sound goes, but it does what it needs to do. There's a couple other albums that have a real thin production, and that's that Alex Perielis, and that would be Under the Influence by Overkill, and even State of Euphoria by Anthrax, to a certain extent, not as much as the 2 I just mentioned, but you guys mentioned already that Chuck's growl on Envy Life
at the 19-second mark is where it starts.
Oh man, just absolutely makes the hair in the back of your neck stand up. And lyrically, definitely got a little more political, whatever, but I love the title track. Perilous Nation, I've always liked that track. Sins of Omission is probably one of the first times you just really hear so much emotion coming from Chuck, false sense of pride and all that stuff. And the ballad, I mean, it's actually a pretty damn good metal ballad.
I know, but come on, man.
I don't mind it. This is my number 2. And a lot of it for me, guys, is 1989 was just a great year in my life, and I had a handful of albums that I will never forget, and this is one of them. So that's my number 2.
Right on. Alan.
Making sure I'm unmuted this time. Yeah, here, 89, 90 is where I came in with Testament. So these albums, these are the ones I have more of a sentimental attachment to. And for me, Practice is still my number 1 in their catalog. Yes, some people have issues with the production. I get that. It's never bothered me any. Like Darcy said, I think it kind of works here. But people are going to hear it differently based on what they do or don't like in the production. Part of it may be that, again, I heard these Testament albums before I heard the first 2 Testament albums, so the production didn't seem out of place because I had nothing to compare them to. But yeah, a great set of songs. I don't mind that they're leaning more political. Marty, I think you made the point earlier that Testament always did really good with, sort of encapsulating a story in each song. Yep. And that's always appealed to me with heavy metal bands. Testament does it very well, and they do it really, really well on this album. Lots of very, catchy, memorable moments. Folks have mentioned most of the good tracks. There's a really good track right at the end. Somebody in the chat just mentioned with Nightmare, Coming Back to You. That's a great driving song, really fast and forceful. So it's a fantastic album. Tons of sentimental attachment. Listening to this with my cousin in the back of the bus, going back and forth to school every day, and it really hasn't worn out its welcome. I don't go back and play it a ton, but whenever I do, it is one of those albums I'm always kind of a little bit afraid, am I burned out on this? Have I just heard it enough? Then I'll play it once or twice, but no, it actually holds up really, really well, even to today. So my favorite in the Testament catalog, Practice what you preach. That's for me. And I understand for a lot of folks, again, they're not as keen on this era of Testament, and that's fine. Especially, I get it if you started earlier than this. But this is where, this is the number one for me.
89. Year I graduated high school. There's a lot of great thrash records coming out. It still felt kind of like the heyday of the whole thing to me. Although, did I say this? Yeah, I did. And the production doesn't bother me. It sounds like, and I'm going to say right here, solid album that feels like it benefited from the excess of the thrash boom. I mean, the excess of what does that mean? You start getting thrash bands doing ballads. K-Tel presents soft thrash. I mean, that's kind of what that whole feels like. But I don't mind the production. It's very clean. It's kind of sterile, but it's very much a product of its time. It's showing a band that is successful, doing well. It's getting the big label money, and they're putting it to use. You can hear everything that's going on. I particularly like the metallic clang in the bass tone. It's interesting. It makes it more percussive. It links it up more with the drums. It's more of the rhythm section. It's a largely mid-paced album that never feels like it's dragging thanks to adventurous song ideas and structures. The songs sometimes go in unpredictable places, which they've always kind of done, and are catchy along the way. Favorites for me, Practice What You Preach is the great lead-off track and a barometer for what's to come. Perilous Nation, energetic, and at the height of Louis' speed range. Any faster, it might have killed him. Yep, we talked about the death growl at the 19-second mark on Envy Life. A little bit of foreshadowing of what's to come. Yeah, it's very much an album that I had it on tape, and it was in my car all the time, back and forth to school, and afterwards going back and forth to work. It just was kind of the soundtrack for that summer for me. And like Mickey, I was so freaking excited for a New Testament record. It threw me initially putting it in, hearing how clean it was, but I listened over and over and over and over again. And this is the era where I started to actually write bands trying to get free stuff. I'd write their fan clubs saying, and I'd send a self-addressed stamp envelope. I think I got a sticker and a newsletter from Testament. I also got one from Death Angel too.
Cool.
But yeah. Cool. I mean, for me, it's my number four. Ranked a little bit better than the New Order. Like I said before this week started, it might have ranked a bit higher even, but some other things kind of surprised me they ranked so high after all these years of maybe not spinning them so much. Which brings us to 1990 Souls of Black, which peaked at number 73 on the Billboard 200. They are kind of consistently in the 70s here, moving forward. Mike, what did you think of Souls of Black?
Know there was some. Oh, sorry, Marty. You just know there was some jackass at Atlantic who's like, "Why can't you guys push up to the 60s?"
Yeah,
so like,
exactly.
Oh, come on,
fuck off. Yeah,
there was a guy doing that.
Absolutely.
This was rushed out. It's unused tracks from Practice What You Preach in the New Order. That was just on the cutting room floor, and they weren't allowed on Clash of the Titans over here unless they had something to promote. So that's where these songs are from. And when it came out, this was another day one purchase. I remember my mates being pissed off with me because I rushed into town and bought this, and they went, "What the fuck are you doing? Seasons in the Abyss has just come out the same day as well."
Same day, yep.
But for me, I was more Testament than Slayer. A couple of weeks later, when I got some more money, I picked up Seasons and love it. But I was all about Testament. Well, I got it home, and while I loved Face in the Sky, Souls of Black, and Malpractice, I was gutted because I just thought, wow, these lot really are just it's churning out the same thing now. I was devastated, and the thing was, unlike the year before when I was able to force feed, practice what you preach, and then in 2 or 3 weeks end up absolutely loving it. 1990, Testament had too much to contend with for me. I mean, I didn't think it was as good as Twisted Into Form. You've got
It wasn't.
Alice in Chains Facelift as well. I was Danzig 2 was a huge album for me in 1990. But even like hankering back to the Clash of the Titans, I even give Lights Camera Revolution more spins than Souls of Black. So for years and years, I just dismissed it. And because of my love of this sort of era production, I decided a few years ago to start revisiting the album. And I thought, well, you know what? Something good's come out of this, because now I feel like I've got a new Old Testament album again, because I was so unfamiliar with it, really, because I just disregarded it for that long. And I play this. I reach for this one now more than the first three that I just mentioned, because it's got a lot more life in it for me. Because
you got a lot more musical maturity behind you too, with all the years of all the other stuff you've processed over the years. You know.
Yeah. So I can tell that it's now that I listen to it again, and I think, yeah, of course, it's got slightly more production that leans more towards the New Order than Practice, but you can tell a mile away it's those era of songs. And the only logical place for it to fit, because it's those era of songs, is at number 4 for me. It doesn't make any sense to put it anywhere else. It's leftover material from my favorite period. So, what I'm saying is I prefer 80s Testament cast-offs to anything they've done since. And number 4. And it could have, at one point during the research for this video, it was at number 3. But when I went back to Practice, I thought, oh, hang on, just calm yourself down. That's still the governor. But it doesn't make any sense to me to put songs from that period any lower than number 4. And now I love it, which is something I didn't do. I just tolerated it years ago.
All right. Good one. Darcy.
This one's actually moved up for me over the years, even though I had what you call one of those life-changing concerts back in, I still got this ticket stub. This is from 1990. Testament was special guest for Megadeth for $20, which you can't even buy a beer for $20 anymore. So I got to see them on this tour, Souls of Black, and I lived probably in and around the Clash of Titans. I forget what month this was. I don't know. I think it was October, something like that. But initially, I didn't like that. Obviously, I didn't like it as much as Practice What You Preach. This is the first time they used a different producer. They used Michael Rosen on this one. Still that same, obviously, kind of thinner sound, because they are leftover tracks, mostly from the writing sessions of Practice. But this one's, it's got some great songs on here, and I'm very comfortable with having this at number 6. And this is one that I will reach for more than the first 3, because the first 3 are just so burnt in my brain. This one quite isn't at that level, but my favorite track on here is Malpractice. I love the riff on that one.
I wrote that down too.
Face in the Sky. The title track's not bad, but you can tell, there's a couple filler tracks on here, but even 7 Days of May is decent. And to have your old band, The Legacy, as a track too, they must have had that for many years. But my number 6, Souls of Black, 1990. And you got to remember, these are the years where everybody's cranking one out. 87, 88, 89, 90. All these bands are,
Mhm.
it still just blows my mind thinking about a new album from your favorite band every year. But there's my number 6.
All right, Alan.
Yeah, I agree with the takes on this one. Again, this was the era where I was getting into Testament. This was the tape I owned, and my cousin owned Practice What You Preach. So obviously we could hear both of them. We both got them at Walmart, just to kind of reinforce what Marty's been saying about these actually being, in the Billboard charts. You could go into a Walmart out in the middle of the country and still buy Testament cassettes when they were coming out. So that's how we got them, and we played them to death. So I do like this one a bit. I feel like it maybe hasn't aged quite as well as Practice What You Preach. It's not fallen off a lot, but this one is maybe a step down from that album. Like Mike was explaining, there's some leftover tracks here, kind of hastily assembled. It's amazing how good it is, all those things considered. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, but it's really not. So yeah, still a good album. I just don't think it's quite as consistent, top notch as Practice. But yeah, lots of good ones on here. The Legacy is obviously meant to be sort of, the ballad part 2, but it works quite well. 7 Days of May. I actually remember like one semester at college finishing. I had all my exams really early. I was like done by Monday or Tuesday afternoon. I had nothing to do for the next 3 or 4 days. So I actually checked out the book from the library because I didn't really know what the novel was about. And so I sat and just kind of speed read it over the next 2 or 3 days to turn it back in before, the library closed for the summer or whatever. So yeah, I even kind of checked out the book based on the song, just wondering what the story was. Yeah, Malpractice is one of the big standouts on it. Always kind of like Facing the Sky, Falling Fast. So yeah, still a great album. I have it ranked the same place Mike does, at number 4. There's one of the later. So I've had 1, 2, and 4 so far. There's one album that slips into the top 3 that comes a bit later for me personally, but yeah, we'll get there later. So yeah, good album. Lots of sentimental attachment. Yeah, just not quite. Just as one step down from Practice. Feels about right for this one. But yeah, still kind of like a B kind of grade overall. Marty, what have you got for this one?
Well, for me, I'm a latecomer to this record. 1990 hits. I am enamored by all things heavy and brutal. I think I saw a couple of the videos for this on MTV. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Never. I probably owned this for maybe 10 years. I got it off of eBay for cheap. It's been kind of interesting revisiting it this week. And I will reiterate what Mike said. Chuck claims it was written and recorded in a hurry so they could be a part of the Clash of the Titans tour in Europe with Megadeth, Slayer, and Suicidal Tendencies. For me, it's solid, but relies on a lot of typical crunch riffs that the band and countless others exploited since the 90s. Bare minimum drum work leaves some tracks feeling a bit flat. Favorite songs on here: Falling Fast, Souls of Black, which is a bit proggy, but sounds like where this band should be at this point in their career. Malpractice, very cool riffing in that. And again, you had the song Ballad off of Practice What You Preach, which was a video, I think kind of a pseudo hit for them. So they tried to follow it up with The Legacy, another ballad, decent but unnecessary. Again, soft thrash. I don't know. But yeah, I'm as a latecomer to this album, I don't have the nostalgia for it. I always like the cover art. I'd always see it sitting on the rack in the tape at the Camelot. I'd pull it out, I'd look at it, but I'd always be like going home with an Unleashed tape or Entombed or whatever the hell, trying to devour everything I could find that was heavy and brutal. But yeah, it's a solid record for me, but it's number 10. I don't think it sucks, but I have no connection to it, and I think there's some stuff they've done since that has been better. But number 10 for me, which leads us to The Ritual, 1992, number 55 on the Billboard 200. They're starting to rise a little bit which is funny. They're rising to 55 on maybe one of their toughest records for me anyway to enjoy. Anyway, what do you think, Mike? What do you think of the Ritual?
Well, I'm not holding it up. There's an early indication. I don't own it. So I remember sitting watching Headbangers Ball one night, and Electric Crown came on, and you know, just a couple of years at the time felt like a long time when you're 17 to 19 or whatever. And because Souls of Black had so much to compete with, and quite frankly, didn't win my attentions and affections, as we now know. By the time 92 comes out, Nirvana's turned things on its head. Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and I embraced all that. I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, it was all butchered at birth for me. I embraced Nirvana, and
I like Nirvana. I like that era too. I liked it too. It didn't kill metal for me, but I liked it as well. You know,
but Testament, you know, the time was starting to clock up with how, you know, the last time I'd paid them any attention, and the Electric Crown come on, and it put a big smile on my face, and I was really sort of delighted with it. So I thought, yeah, you know what, I'm going to sort of kick it old school tomorrow. I'm going to go and buy that Testament album, which was, you know, I got mocked for that in my friendship group at the time, because it seemed a bit like, what the fuck are you buying Testament in 1992 for? We've moved on, you know. And I was like, well, that Electric Crown song's good. I'm buying it. Well, I came home, I put it on, and it's like, to me, I've always said the production is as ugly as sin. The guitar tone is as ugly as sin. But that Electric Crown song done a good job of masking that for me on the video. When I got the album home, it bored the tits off me. I hated it from start to finish. I like the song Return to Serenity. In fact, I actually thought, oh God, here they go again with another ballad. But fair's fair, it's a good one, and I had no issues with them sticking a ballad on each album. You know, absolutely no problem. So I enjoyed that song as well. But I got the impression, and I've since watched interviews and videos and stuff like that, you know, and it's like, and I'm sort of piecing the rest together in my mind with what I've watched, but I wonder just how little the band even had to do with this album. And I get the impression that the record label come in and went, right, look, we're thinking of calling the album The Ritual, because it isn't negative and it isn't positive connotations with it. It can be whatever you want to interpret it. Right, guys? And they were, yeah, okay. And what about this little symbol thing? You might see that on a fucking Ouija board or something like that.
How unassuming. Look how shitty that looks on a tape. It's like, what the hell is this? It doesn't even have the logo on it.
But when you've got some suit in an office going, look, it's got 5 sides. It's your 5th album. There's 5 of you guys. Come on. And they're going, yeah, okay. And then you hear stuff like, I mean, they're just so banal. Let Go of My World. I listen to that and I burn up. It's just so cringy. Or the sort of vocal patterns of So Many Lies. It's like, Jesus, you're really scraping the barrel here. It's got absolutely nothing redeeming. I don't even like Electric Crown anymore, to be quite honest. It's number 11 all day long for me. It's a piece of shit.
All right. Darcy.
Well, that's tough to follow up that, eh? Jeez. Well, for me, it's definitely not a piece of shit, but it's not super high either. I have this one at number 9. So this is 1992. This is kind of reminded me right around the time that I went from cassettes to buying CDs. Was right around 92-ish, 91. But I love the track Electric Crown. That was the first video that came out for it. But I do have it at number 9. It just, I don't know, something happened. They even dropped the this is the first one that doesn't appear to have the Megaforce logo on it anymore. It's just Atlantic. But there's some good tracks on here that I enjoy, and I do like where is it? What's the one you mentioned? The Return to Serenity. I like that one. Deadline would be kind of like the what do you call it? Like a deep track that I enjoy. Let Go of My World. But there is a lot of just this gear on this album. There's not a lot of peaks and valleys on here, and it kind of does hold it back a little bit, but I still do enjoy this album. I definitely don't dislike it, but I had to put it at number 9. Alan?
Yep. Good points. Let me switch this over here. Yeah, this album had a very big, oops, wrong button here. There was a lot of hype pushing this one. The Electric Crown video got showed for ages before this album was released. It was on Headbangers Ball weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. And yeah, it was a good song. Everybody liked it. I was really excited for the album to come out, and it felt like it took forever for the Bloody thing to come out. And of course, then I had to wait like another month or so before I could actually get out to a place with a record store where I could buy it. But yeah, this album your description, Darcy, is really good. It has one speed, and that's medium. I described, the debut album earlier as, the band had this, just vital sense of urgency that they wanted to push really hard. On this album, it doesn't feel like they are pushing at all. I'm not saying they're not trying. I'm not saying that they phoned it in or something like that. But this album just has no oomph to it. It feels like, okay, we've done several albums. We've been on a major label the whole time. We're an established thing. We're a few years older. We're a little more mature. We can put the album together in a very safe way. And that's probably the word I use to describe this album the most these days. It's a very safe album. Kind of like you were saying, Mike. They probably really did have all those discussions about, well, it's 92. Maybe we don't want the big cheesy looking metal logo on the cover. Let's have something a little more anomalous. Let's have a title that's, the 90s was, quickly became famous for these kind of, generic one word vague titles to albums and songs. So Ritual, like Mike said, what does it mean? Whatever you want it to. And Electric Crown, I feel like, was a little bit of false advertising for the album. It's the one song that does have a little bit of spark to it. It's just catchy one you can sink your teeth into. There's not much else on the album that you can. And again, it's not that they are bad songs. There's still good performances from Skolnick and stuff on here. It just has this very medium kind of vibe to it. There's nothing here that makes you want to go into the pit. There's nothing here that's going to make waters go raging or anything. It's a very fine, very nice, very safe thrash album. This is the kind of album that your parents weren't even going to bother telling you to turn it down. So yeah, and it was very telling of what was happening to thrash, by 92. I mean, at this point, you've had the Black Album come out. Point. Yeah, you've had the Black Album come out. You've had Countdown to Extinction come out. You had Sound of White Noise was, right on the horizon. It was not a good time to be thrash. And this album is still a thrash album. I'll give it that. They weren't trying to go in a completely commercial direction the way Metallica had. They weren't trying to, chase Metallica down the road like a sad little puppy dog the way Megadeth did. They weren't going off in a very different kind of direction with a different vocalist the way Anthrax was about to. So, I mean, it's still a thrash album. The performances are still okay and stuff, but it just doesn't have any life about the album. At the end of the day, you could say it's boring And that's one of the worst things you can say about any kind of extreme metal band. If they're boring, they have failed in some capacity, and the Ritual fails a bit. Yeah, grade wise, I give it maybe like, a C- or something. Again, I don't think it's a dog shit album, but I also would only rank it 10th. And I could almost push it down if you catch me on the right day. So yeah, not a good album. Signs of trouble, for not just Testament, but for thrash in general at this stage. Marty, what is your take on the Ritual?
One thing we did forget to mention, this is the 5th and last album of the original lineup. They start shuffling around members at this point. But a big strike on this album for me is, and starts to become a problem with Testament moving forward, this album is 55 minutes, 16 seconds long. It takes
forever to listen to this album.
I do not want that much Testament that isn't an original first 3 albums to go for 55 fucking minutes. It's too much. It's a decent album, though the band is showing signs of fatigue creatively. Again, over 55 minutes, bloated, and just creeps along. Good songs. Electric Crown, which is a proper Testament song. It feels very true to Practice What You Preach. It feels like that sits within that song, that album perfectly. So Many Lies, very catchy song. Agony has some inspired musical moments and a awesome twin lead that build up to the solo. Return to Serenity, it's a ballad. Oh my God, but it's a catchy ballad. Then you got songs like As the Seasons Gray. It's a 6-minute, 12-second song. The Sermon with predictable riffs. Troubled Dreams, all drag along with boring crunch riffs. There's just not a lot of, the journey that was in all these other songs beforehand. It's like they're coming back from the quest. They're like just a long slog walking home. That's what this feels like. It doesn't get to where it needs to go to quick enough for me. And again, it prattles on for almost a fucking hour. I mean, it's too much. It's 1992. And the funny thing is, you look at Souls of Black, they're rushed to write that record. The Ritual, they had 2 years, and what did they do? They overwrote. They didn't do any self-editing. It seems like everything they wrote, they kept. 55 minutes is a long album. It's a long album. For me, this is number 11. It's right down Swirl in the Bowl. A couple good songs on here, but man, this is how I own it on tape. My tape deck in the shop broke. I just bought the goddamn thing and it's already dead. I hate tape decks. Oh. This whole cassette resurgence, people just need to shut up. Anyway, that leads us to 1994. This is Low. Number 122 on the Billboard Top 200. It features James Murphy and John Tempesta on drums. Mike, what did you think of Low?
Well, I own it. It's got that bad mid-90s, let's layer a picture on top of another picture.
It's an angel. Yep.
Yeah, like it always reminds me of Burn My Eyes. That's another one that's just like
right.
A picture with another one on and another one until we've got something, In 94, when this came out, I was like, not sufficiently interested in Testament at all. I was all, to be honest, in 94 for me, it was Stone Temple Pilots, Green Day, things like that. I'd No Effects were huge for me. Bad Religion. I'd moved into all that territory. And I bought a Kerrang magazine when they reviewed this and they said, back with a lion's roar, blah, blah, blah. Fantastic. And I ended up getting the cassette of it because I had to drive somewhere in the delivery job I was in at the time, and I didn't have anything in the van. And I was like, I went into the shop in the street where we still could just go in and buy something, And I picked that Testament album up on cassette, and I listened to it for a while, and I thought, yeah, it's definitely the best thing I've heard since, well, at the time I would have probably said practice what you preach. The title track, I've always thought that was a great one. I don't really know why he went for the pigtails on the video, but thought it was a great song. I think it tails off at the back end of it. It's kind of front loaded for me a bit. I think when you've got a voice like Chuck Billy has, and he's with a proven ability on previous releases, they seem hell bent on hindering him from here on out. And it's like, stick with that dog voice goods. Stick with all that. And I'm thinking, you've got this real big palette of ability, and you just want to use this little bit here, for what? You're not going to be Cannibal Corpse. You're not a band like that. So you're not going to appeal. I don't know why bands, in the history of music, has anyone in this video or anyone in the chat got any good examples of a band trying to jump on a current trend that's kind of alien to them and then it being a success? Because I can't think of any. I don't know why they don't just say, times have moved on. We'll go back to construction, and when it's our day in the sun again, we'll come back out and do it again. It's okay. I actually used to think it was better than I do these days. I don't give a shit about James Murphy. I'm not interested in guitars, so I wouldn't know what he had done. I wouldn't know if it was him or not. I'm just the song in general type of guy, and for me, it's okay. But I rank it at number 7.
All right, Darcy, what do you think about Low?
Well, I got it right at number 7 too. That is exactly the spot. But I think, and Mike mentioned James Murphy. He did a great job.
He did.
There is no, he didn't hold this album back. You got a really reputable, solid drummer coming in, fresh off of maybe not his highlight of his career with Exodus, Force of Habit, but John Tempesta came over to Testament kind of after he did a couple albums with Exodus, and he did a great job on here too. I love Dogface Gods, but I'd have to say the highlight of this album for me is Hail Mary. That is I've always loved PC. There's a part in where Chuck sings, "What about the CIA? What the fuck is their real job anyway?" I just love that. Chasing Fear, Ride, another good. There's an instrumental on here that I still can't pronounce, but maybe Alan with his multiple languages could pronounce that one. But yeah, this is a solid album. I've had it, always had it at number 7, and the addition of James Murphy and John Tempesta, no problem. Pretty good for 1994, because you think, shit, even after 92, Exodus went away after 92. What Metallica was doing fuck all then. I can't even remember. What was Megadeth doing then?
Euthanasia was a year earlier.
Asia.
So whatever came after Euthanasia was
94. Yeah. So this is my number 7. Low.
Hey, over 100 people, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yep.
If you're in here and you never talked on the chat, please go ahead. Say something. We have a good community. They won't bite you. Don't be a wallflower. Alan, what'd you think of Low?
Interesting. I didn't hear this when it came out. I completely blanked on it, even getting released. So came to it later. Just so I don't forget, Darcy, yeah, I can't pronounce the instrumental either. It's a Japanese word, and it specifically refers to the subgenre of Japanese anime that deals with tentacle pornography. So, there you go.
Hey, you learn something every day.
I can't say it, but I can tell you what it means, and you probably wish I didn't. so yeah, this one I came to much later. I eventually found it really cheap in a used bin. It's like, yeah, I'll give it a chance just because I never had. I'll go ahead and just say I've got it ranked 9th. I don't think it's a terrible album. It has its moments. I don't like the cover art. Like Mike said, this has that bad mid-90s look to it. And I actually like a lot of Dave McKean's artwork usually, but this one just doesn't work. Yeah, the whole weird angel centerpiece thing just doesn't seem right. Yeah, it's got the stupid mid 90s. Let's pick what's like one short word that has kind of a downer vibe to it. That'll be our album title. Low. Perfect.
They have the damn aesthetic of the design too. Look at it. It's like chaotic. Look at that shit.
Yeah,
it's just like stuff's like words on the side and crooked and big 1 and 2 and all this bullshit. It's just not well done. It's not well done.
It's the slapped together kind of mid 90s look that has not aged well whatsoever. But yeah, Skolnick is out. Louis out. So it's the first kind of lineup changes. This is also going to be their last album for Atlantic, so that era's wrapping up here. There is still some interesting stuff going on. It's not a disaster of an album. It's also, sometimes this one gets pegged as a thrash or as a death metal album, and I don't get that at all. King Snake, thank you very much.
Thanks,
really
Jake.
Appreciate that. Good to have you in the chat tonight. There are some moments where, yes, the vocals are getting deeper, especially on things like Dogface Gods, which Darcy mentioned. Is a pretty cool track. The riffs are getting a little fatter. That's spelled with a PH, not an F. There are moments like on Hail Mary where if one wanted to, you could jump the fuck up to that song. Yeah. And I'm stealing that from an old Autothrall review just to be very transparent about it. That line just cracked me up to no end when I saw that. So it's not a terrible album. That said, there's not a whole lot on it that stands out either. Shades of War is probably my personal favorite track. So it's not bad. It's certainly better than what a lot of other thrash bands were doing by this point. Like Darcy was pointing out, a lot of the other bands were really had lost their way. We're out in the weeds at this point. Testament's not that far off base here. It just doesn't quite get there. But I don't think it's an embarrassing album, and I don't think it needs to be referred to as a death metal album, even though it is trending into that mid 90s groove. They're aware that Pantera is the hot new thing now, and they're starting to think we could do some of that too, I bet. So it's in there, but it hasn't completely taken over their sound. So yeah, anyway, I give it kind of like a C type grade. Not it's average. I could listen to it. I don't own it anymore. Probably it's the kind of thing, if I saw this one for a few bucks, I would pick it up. I probably wouldn't play it very much, but I wouldn't be embarrassed to have it on the shelf or anything like that. So I'll give it a rank of number 9, a C kind of average grade, and say that it's better than its reputation. And I do think some folks have finally come around on it. When you look at like newer, more recent reviews, I think they understand the album better than people did when it came out. But Marty, what's your understanding of Low?
Well, when this album came out, I had a thing. James Murphy bugged me. If he felt like a strain of herpes, he was like, he would pop up in all these different bands. Oh, he's in Obituary. Oh,
that man's a saint, Marty.
he's in Cancer now, and oh, geez,
he works at a homeless shelter on the weekends.
He's in Hallows Eve now, and like all of a sudden, boom! Look, he's in Testament. Oh, great!
He donates half his sales proceedings to help abused women's charities.
He saved a kitten once. Yeah, he saved a kitten from a fire. So when this album came out, I listened to it. I'm like, oh, yep. There's a band that's out of ideas, trying to stick with the times and be relevant. They get a death metal axe slinger in the band. Let's heavy it up. Let's get with the times. I wrote this album off. And this week I put it on. heard it completely different. I heard a completely different album. Let's see. Detuned guitars give the Testament formula weight. More death metal minded stylistically, with Chuck adding more death growls to his otherwise melodious style. Great solo work, interesting twists in the song structure. The band sounds revitalized with a more lively drummer. One thing listening to this on headphones I noticed that I didn't notice listening to it on the stereo. The guitars are heavy, but sound like distortion pedal run through a Fender Strat set on the single coil neck pickup. Why? You can like hear the strings in it. Like it's heavy, there's meat, there's weight, but you can hear the strings. It's like, it sounds like they're playing it on a Fender Strat with the front pickup. It's stupid, but it doesn't detract from the album. Favorite song, Hail Mary, my favorite. So much energy and weight in the riffs. Chuck sticks to his patented higher register. Very interesting riff flourishes. Low is a great and heavy opener with a stop in the verse riff acting as a reoccurring hook. Legions in Hiding, love the flow in this track. Great verse and chorus work overall. It's just weird. It kind of blew me away. I went in thinking, oh my God, I got to slog through this shitty album. And I'm like, listened to it. I'm like, I don't remember it being this good. I listened to it a couple times this week. So, again, musical maturity, you change your ideas as you get older. I mean, obviously 1994, there was way better death metal albums. This isn't a death metal album. It's got the influence. You could tell that they're trying to branch out a bit. They're trying to appeal to that crowd, yet not completely alienate whatever remaining fans are still clinging to the Testament name. So yeah, for me, Low is a number 6. Who would have thought that this album ranked so high? It's right in the middle of the pack for me.
So you rank Low middle.
I rank it middle. It's middle. It's not low, it's middle. Which, okay, let's get into the next one. 1997's Demonic, which features Gene Hoglan, his first appearance for drums on Testament, and a guitar player named Derek Ramirez. Don't know who that is, and there's no charting information, so which means it didn't chart.
Ramirez actually was in the band back in their Legacy days.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they went back and got one of their old guys on board.
Right on. Mike, what did you think of Demonic?
I don't know on that one either.
I don't either.
But, musically, it's got this sort of industrial type of sound. And they had a song on this film at the time, New Eyes of Old, off that album. And, it's set on New Year's Eve on this sort of crazy street party, and Testament are playing in the middle of it on this Strange Days film. And, the song, any song off that album sort of works on that film as a little scene. And I wouldn't have had a problem with it. If it had never had appeared anywhere else, I'd have thought, oh, well, fair enough, they were on that Strange Days film. Great. But as an album, there's just nothing there for me. It's like, and the thing is, I've thankfully haven't forced myself down that hole of listening to that style of music enough to be able to say, I think it sounds like this or that or the other. I've no idea what sort of bands they sound like, but I just see there's a lot of sort of tight rhythmic sound verging on industrial, for want of a better word. And then he's got the monotone death growls. And like I said earlier, it's just like, to me, you've got a guy that's got a far broader ability, and you're wasting him on this monotonous death metal growl. And Eric Peterson's to blame for that, for those riffs. He doesn't leave Chuck anywhere else to go. And that must have been what they'd arranged between themselves. But to me, it's just the only song that I can sort of remember was John Doe, because it had a video. And when I went back to listen to the album, and I was like, oh, I can't even get through this shit. And I just skipped to the John Doe song, and I thought, oh, and that isn't as good as I remember either. It's okay, but it would be filler on any other Testament album to me. So it was easily last place, this album.
All right, Darcy, Demonic.
My number 12, but I'm going to tell you. I'll tell it. Well, what will I say first? I'll say that it's the least Testament sounding Testament album for sure.
Sure.
But man, I don't dislike this album. From the start, going right in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 6, 6, right into Demonic Refusal is so bloody heavy. I used to crank that as loud as I possibly could. Great tune. Derek Ramirez, he's from back in the early days. Actually, if you kind of go through some of the writing credits on the latest 4 albums, I think he appears a couple of times. I think he's still a good friend of Chuck and Eric, so he does have some, I think, in the lyrical department anyways. But some other highlights for me.
Thanks, Ian. You rule, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, Ian. My second favorite track on here is Hatred's Rise. That is about as close as you're going to get to normal Chuck for vocals. I love the way he sings on that one. John Doe and Burning Times are a couple more highlights for me. Very heavy record. Eric, whatever there is on this album for lead work is mostly Eric. Glenn Avalis, or how do you pronounce it? Avalis. He's on a couple solos. He used to be in, what band was he in before? He was in Forbidden for a while, Glenn. But yeah, so there is the original artwork, and this is what they tweaked it on the reissue. I have the vinyl version, so it kind of looks like some kind of horror. What do you call those, smut films? But
looks like the Slipknot mask.
Yeah, definitely a Slipknot mask. But you know what? I don't hate this album, but I do have to put it at number 12.
All right, Alan. If this is your number 1, I'm kicking you in the nuts.
I already gave my number. I gave my number 1 a long time ago.
Okay.
No. I've got this at number 12 also. Like Darcy said, I don't hate the album. But like Mike said, they just don't seem to have many ideas here. And as such, there's not much to hang on to. The opening song is pretty good. There's, 1 or 2 others that are all right. But most of the album it feels like they just don't have many ideas to work with. They're definitely trying to be heavier. Once again, though, everyone wants to refer to this as, Testament's death metal album. Other than Chuck's vocals, there's not a lot of death metal music here. There's a few breakdowns and stuff, I guess, but what it really sounds like, to me at least, is it sounds like that 90s, knuckle dragging Meathead, Pantera, and Machine Head sound. They're trying to be the tough guy mid 90s metal that was popular. They're chasing that sound. They're not trying to sound like Entombed or Cannibal Corpse. They're really, really band. And yeah, they know what they want to do, but it seems like maybe they don't quite know how to execute it all that well. So it's not working great. I saw them on this tour in a little cowboy bar in West Texas, of all godforsaken places. So yeah, a band that had been on Atlantic 3 years earlier was now playing to maybe a couple of hundred people, and I'm probably rounding up to get that number. They sounded good. There was nothing wrong with the show. I enjoyed going to it, but they were no longer drawing a huge crowd or anything with this material. So yeah, I bought it when it came out. Didn't mind it. Didn't keep it for the long haul. I go back every now and then and will play it online, but I've never felt the need to track it back down or anything. I noticed, one thing that was kind of funny. If you read, some of the older reviews, things, from, 15 years ago or whatever, you do see a lot of these comments comparing to this is going to appeal to folks, who are into Pantera This is, this is for folks who want to just, go into a pit and windmill kick people in the face, and they like that style of metal. And obviously it didn't have a good reception. Those scores are very low. This album was not well received. It's always been panned. If you start looking at newer comments or reviews about it, a lot of people are more lenient on this album. They'll be like, oh no, this album is really badass. But almost to a person, every single one of them makes that exact same comment. So it's like, I love this album, man. I love to beat fucking posers to this thing. Or like, hell yeah, I'll kick anybody in the face when it says they don't like this album. Just like, oh my God, you're playing exactly into the joke stereotypes that people were saying this album was written for 15 years before you were probably even born. It just amuses me to no end that, yes, the people now who want to defend this album the most are exactly just the ones that really hear it and just think, you're like, yeah, I could curb stomp someone to this in the background. Yeah, whatever, man. It's not a terrible album, but it's kind of a terrible Testament album. And that's why I've got it in the number 12 slot. Just not for me. Marty, your take on this one?
Well, they embrace the death influence. Is it full on death metal? It's not, but they're trying. The bigger, meaner guitar tone, tuned even lower. They mess with it a bit. Chuck focuses primarily on his meaty growling style. He is a powerful growler, but this isn't Testament. It just isn't. I don't mind that influence. I don't mind that style, but predominantly, I think the album is like 80% death growls. Demonic seems like the culmination of where the band was heading creatively during this era, a product of a legacy band trying to find a foothold in heavier times, and they had to get this otherwise unremarkable album out of their system. That's how I feel about it. Demonic, Refusal, Together as One, good songs. This album doesn't suck, but it's so unremarkable, especially for a Testament record. I couldn't wait for it to be done. Number 12. It's 12 for me all day. This is the easiest. The first one I put on my ranking was this. I said, I know what the last one is, and the rest will all fall into place here eventually. But that brings us to 1999, The Gathering, which features James Murphy again. Oh, wait, did you want to?
I just wanted to one.
Go ahead.
I like what Mike said though about Eric really not leaving Chuck much wiggle room on that album too, because Eric actually loves the heavier shit too. What's his Dragon? What's his other band?
Dragon Lord.
Dragon Lord. That's good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of in that vein too. And Eric actually does some singing on that too. I'm sure he does. But he actually does some singing on Titans of Creation too. But
he sings on all the Dragon Lord, all the vocals.
Yeah, and it's screechy, heavier death shit too. And but he didn't leave Chuck much room on that one. But like Alan said, you know what? It's just a bad Testament album. You put any other logo on there, it might do well. You never know. But yeah, so what's next?
We've got The Gathering, which I do want to say it features James Murphy, Steve DiGiorgio, and Dave Lombardo on drums. Came out in 1999. The album is 42 minutes, 43 seconds long. And I do want to read one thing that I thought was an interesting tidbit that was kind of sad. Shortly after the release of this album, guitarist James Murphy was diagnosed with a brain tumor, which was successfully removed. As a result, Murphy can't remember his involvement with The Gathering. So it's like they removed that chunk of life time from his memory. It freaks me out. I remember reading Bill Ward from Black Sabbath saying Heaven and Hell, he doesn't remember playing a single beat on that record. He was so completely wasted. He doesn't remember anything from that whole session. How can you be so frickin' bazonked out of your mind that you don't even remember recording an album? That's something to do that not a lot of people get to do. And yeah, I guess it's old hat if you're an old musician, but to be that out of it, it's just, I read that little tidbit of info about James Murphy. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that time and felt bad for the guy and all the bad things I said about him.
That's why Bill I was going to say that's why Bill didn't make it to Mob Rules.
Yep, exactly. Because he couldn't keep his shit together.
No.
You're talking to a guy who woke up in an attic once, in a puddle of Jello next to a small stuffed Triceratops. So it happens.
Oh,
It happens. That's all I can say.
oh, I can't wait to.
I want to hear this story.
Oh, I want to read his book when it comes out.
I think all the pictures have finally been scrubbed from the internet.
Oh, there was pictures of it?
Moving
We're gonna
on.
do some digging now. That's it.
Damn it. The professor has a wild side. What's up, Mike? What did you think of The Gathering, 1999?
I saw this tour. Well, I did and I didn't. I didn't see this tour, but I seen them in 2004, which this was the only album they had out. Obviously, it's 4 years before the formation of Damnation. And a bit like your experience, Alan, when you said there was a couple of hundred there. I seen them at JB's in Dudley, and it was another 200 or 300. And Chuck Billy was the only original member. Even Eric didn't play.
Oh, wow.
Eric didn't play because of a broken leg. Lombardo was on the drums, so he was off this album. And they had Steve Smith from, is it Vicious Rumours he was with?
Yeah, I think that's one of the bands he's with. Yeah,
I can't remember who was on bass, but it was basically like Chuck Billy and a backing band, But it was still good to see it, and this album was a big deal for me when it came out. It came out at just the right time. I had lost so much interest in music by 1999, going into 2000, that somehow I heard DNR, and I just clung to that song for a while.
What a great fucking song!
Yeah, I got the album, and there's lots of bangers on here, and it's like the blueprint for what they're still doing today. Really, I think this is like the first time it feels to me like they've changed into what they still are. I mean, most of them are great songs. I can't read the track list, but 3 Days of Darkness and what was the other one? True Belief and stuff like that. I love the majority of this album. I think Lombardo comes along, and I think he's a perfect balance because he still plays, if you listen to it, he still plays a lot of single bass pedal drum work on this album.
He knows, he understands the assignment. He's kind of pulling from that old style, the Old Testament style.
Yeah, and he plays respectfully to the album. He could come along and do what he can do that we all know he can do, but he doesn't. He keeps it in check, and I think the album benefits for it. And for me, I've got it at number 5, and it's kind of because of the drum work in that, because him keeping it in check is something that I don't think happens anymore. I don't think our mate Gene keeps it in check, but I'm not blaming him either. I'll talk about that when we get to them. But this album for me is a perfect balance of the old stuff that I absolutely love and the new stuff that they're doing now. It's like a perfect blend. So it's number 5 for me.
All right, Darcy.
Number 4. And Mike just hit the nail on the head. Exactly what I was going to say. This is the perfect balance of Old Testament and what they're doing right now. This is one of the first times I remember, when I got to know the name Andy Sneap. This one is mixed by Andy Sneap, because I really didn't see Andy Sneap all over the place, or I didn't associate the name with all the metal albums that he produces and things now until probably about probably 2010, no, 2008, because they worked with him again, actually. But this is the perfect balance. It has probably some of my all-time favorite Testament songs. Number one being True Believer for sure. Where is it? Legions of the Dead and DNR. Dave Lombardo, I wrote down. Dave Lombardo does the perfect job. He just, like you said, Marty, you said he understands the assignment. He just perfect. James Murphy, no problem. And I think they finally accomplished what they were maybe hinting on with a little bit from Low, and maybe a little fraction of what they were trying to do on Demonic. But this is, if you've never heard this one or heard the band Testament, I would point you right here. This is a great album. My number 4.
All right. Alan.
I'll see you number 4 and raise you to number 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, when this came out, I completely missed it. 1999 was a year where I was moving around a lot and was not keeping up with new releases well at all. Towards the end of the year, I started getting caught up on stuff a little bit. And it was like, oh, there was a Testament album? Huh. Funny that. So I probably didn't hear this until spring of 2000. I do have to say, you'll notice earlier when we discussed Low, I didn't say it was their worst cover art, because the hypodermic penis on the cover of this one, I can do without that. Thank you very much. This cover is just a mess.
Here's the updated one.
Oh, can you make that bigger, Marty? What do we got?
That's better.
Anything would be better. That's not good, but I'll take it.
Ken, you got the angel wings. So what happened when Photoshop became a thing? Is there like an angel wings filter or something that I'm not, maybe don't have on my version of Photoshop?
It's like the star wipe on the old camcorders. Right. You had to have it, and if you've got it, you're going to use it.
Yep.
But yeah, hideous cover art, but a real banger of an album. And Mike and Darcy have explained it well. They keep a little bit of, that, heavier pseudo death style that, they've used a little bit on Demonic and stuff, but they put it back into, a thrash metal package through and through, and it works incredibly well. They're dealing with a really high end lineup here too. Let's be honest. This is kind of like, it's a great album, but it's kind of like saying, well, that basketball team that had Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan and those guys all on it, they were good too. It's like, well, they almost had to be. With this lineup, you've almost got to make a good album. You probably would have to go out of your way not to. Yeah. It's got one of their best ever opening tracks. One of the best opening tracks on any thrash album, in my opinion. DNR comes out of the gate and it just roars. It throttles you. It's like, we are not fucking around here, boys and girls, so get ready. Love the way that track just smashes things coming out of the gate. Lots of good ones throughout it, though. Both Mike and Darcy mentioned True Believer. Good song. It kind of has a very good pace, a little atmospheric, a little moody, which they're good at. But you hit that breakdown in the middle, and again, it just like rattles your fucking cage. Chuck gets to break out. He like Mike's been saying, he uses that deeper vocal, but just for that one part, the ash to ash. You're just like, oh fuck yeah, let's do this.
Yeah,
but then give me my stuffed Tyrannosaurus.
But then he gets out of he gets out of that mode and goes back to the other mode. So a phenomenally put together song. If I've got a complaint besides the cover art, I'm going to say the album's a bit front loaded. My other favorite tracks, like 3 Days of Darkness, Legions of the Dead. They're all in the first 6. When I get to the middle of the album, stalls out a little bit. I'm not nuts about Careful What You Wish For. It's okay, but not bad, but not great. Riding the Snake, I think, is a bit of a miss. So misses a little bit there. There's worth noting, they're still doing every song's kind of got its own little story, and they're really good at packaging, stories. They still have some, different political stuff in here. They have another climate change song in here with Fall of Cypladome. Kind of a shout out, to Greenhouse Effect from Practice What You Preach even. Mm-hmm. So yeah, great album. Works really well. Just maybe starts to fade just a little bit towards the end, but like this one a lot. Played it a lot once I finally got a hold of it in 2000. I've always thought it was a real shame. What you described earlier, Marty, of course, was a bad situation with Murphy, and of course, Chuck was going to have some health issues as well. Yeah. I always thought it was a real shame they didn't get a chance to make a second album with this particular lineup, because they really seemed to click well on this one. Number 3 for me, one of my favorites.
Can you imagine like Steve DeGorgio, every band he's in, can you imagine him like being in the Wiggles or something? How awesome the Wiggles would suddenly be. I don't know. Anyway. Wiggles. I don't know. First thing that came to mind. For me.
Why is that the first thing that came to your mind?
I don't know why that came to mind. I don't know why. My
Darcy, brain. Wait. No. You opened this can of worms.
My brain works in mysterious ways.
Darcy, Mike, do y'all know? Do you have Wiggles in your countries, or is this something that America's cursed with?
I know who the Wiggles are.
Okay, Mike.
No idea.
See, this is why the UK still has some class about them, and all of us in this hemisphere just wallow into the depravity that is the Wiggles.
Yep.
Mike, I'm not going to explain it to you. You are better off not knowing. Please, just if you've ever trusted me on anything, trust me on this. You don't Google them. Don't ever look them up. Just pretend whatever Marty just said didn't happen.
In the ignorance.
Absolute ignorance is bliss in this case. It really is. You do not share our burden in carrying the knowledge of the Wiggles.
Yep.
All right, Marty, fast forward past that, please, and
sorry.
Let's go on.
Well, I'll show my disc. It's different because it was a advanced compact disc. I was on the Spitfire, so there you go. A little bit more normal, less Photoshoppy, I guess, cover. But
there's no hypodermic penis on it. It's
no hypodermic penis. The Spitfire Burnt Offerings promo. Anyway. Come to find out, after all my years of complaining about the guy, even though I thought he was a great player, the James Murphy factor is a thing. Songwriting quality increases by 75% on this record. Lombardo adds much needed excitement to the overall cohesion and presentation of this album, yet keeps it in line to the early years, like we talked about. Chuck returns to his normal voice, using the growls more as a texture and variety. This is well-rounded style. This is the well-rounded style moving forward. Testament feels comfortable in their own skin again and are finally embracing the modern era in a way that is their own and makes sense. It finally makes sense. Demonic for Testament, that album didn't make sense for them. It just didn't make sense. And you're all right. DNR, Do Not Resuscitate, amazing song with challenging structure and advanced melody, makes this explode with excitement. Just add blast beats and Lombardo's frantic passion, and it's a great, great, great song. Eyes of Wrath, heavy headbanger of a song. 3 Days in Darkness. There isn't anything on here that really bothers me. The production is so in your face. Sneap did a great job, but he's a great producer. He's a very good modern producer. He makes the instruments sound real, even though it's very digital shine to them. But that, what does that leave me at? The Gathering, number 3.
Oh, I just have to say, after that last comment, Marty, DNR now stands for Do Not Research Wiggles.
It's if you had kids thing, you'll know.
I'll be right back.
You know. Which
one other thing, Marty, I would say, we mentioned Sneap. I would say 1999 still wasn't, it's not the production that we're stuck in. I'll tell you that it wasn't till probably 10 more years that we really got into those samey albums. So at that point, I think, I don't know if that's one of I'd have to look at the work of Andy Sneap to see if this is one of his first albums that he mixed. I don't know where his career really began, with what band, other than his own bands that he's been in. But hey, timeline wise, do you wanna fire in and talk about First Strike Still Deadly?
Yep, I have it on my list here. First Strike Still Deadly. It came out in 2001.
But we weren't going to rank this one, right?
We're not ranking it. Nah.
Okay. Because, well, can I go first this time, Mike?
Sure. You're up.
Anyways, you had mentioned way back at the start of this stream how much I think you love the song Alone in the Dark.
Love it.
So anyways, this is the updated re-release of First Strike Still Deadly. Originally came out in 2001. This is a 2018 reissue. That you've never heard this, Marty, the whole thing?
No, I've never even heard the Legacy demo.
Okay.
Which is insane. But
two things. This is by far my number one re-recorded album of anything. It is absolutely essential testament, in my opinion. It contains 5 songs off of the Legacy, and it contains 5 songs off of the New Order, and one other track that Mike mentioned called Reign of Terror, which is 2 of these are sung by Zetro. So Zetro's version of Alone in the Dark is on here.
Huh.
So that's the first one you need to, after this stream, you need to look it up, because yes, I'm glad he went to Exodus, but man, does he do a phenomenal job on that song. You know the part where it's like armies of witches are called in from the north, murders of elders will occur.
Yep.
Imagine that being sung in Zetro's snotty, snarly vocals. Absolutely superb. DiGiorgio's on this, and John Tempesta's on the drums. And if you want great versions of these songs, this is the album for you. This is superb. I will take the originals over this only because I can, but this is a great runner-up. This absolutely, and check out Reign of Terror. And I think, like Mike said, that one should have ended up on an album. It is a superb song, but that one is sung by, it's an old song because it's sung by Zetro. But these are all updated vocals and everything from 2001.
Well, I'll give you my take on it, Marty, seeing as though you haven't heard it. I've got the old one that's barely visible. But it's there.
Yeah.
I fucking hate it. It's when it came out, it was novel. It was like, oh, listen to those classic Testament songs off the Legacy and the New Order. And they're done differently. They've got the sort of growly, death metal vocal. And the thing is, the first thing I'll say is, what makes the New Order and the Legacy so awesome is the atmosphere on them albums. And this album, this re-recording has had every ounce of atmosphere sucked out of it. It's bone dry. And I think where it was sort of novel initially, because of the production so stale and there's nothing to it, you can hear vocal lines that you might have struggled to hear on the original albums because of the sound, the production and the performance. But he does sing the vocals. He enunciates the words very well, and you can hear lines that you couldn't hear. But his actual performance, it's ludicrous. It's as if he doesn't know. You wouldn't think he had performed these songs and recorded them on an album. On Over the Wall, when he says, escape must occur on this night.
Yeah.
When you listen to the re-recording one, he goes, escape must occur on this night. as if he think, well, what, did you not get the memo, Chuck? Did you think it was maybe escape going to occur on the afternoon? It's a surprise to learn that escape must occur on this night. You think, what the fucking hell did you do that like that for? And he puts gutturals in when they're not meant to be there. And he puts feeling into parts that doesn't need it and leaves feeling out of parts that you know does need it. And I just think, see, that album was recorded to help his cancer costs. They recorded that in the same place as the Dragon Lord album. They finished up the Dragon Lord album slightly earlier than scheduled and went, well, why don't we just... And what they did was on the Testament Legion's website, they had all the fans voting for what songs they would like. And I remember voting for something. I can't remember what song I voted for, but I remember being somebody that was, you know, wanting to vote for it. And they compiled a list of the songs, and these were the ones that the fans voted that they wanted to do. So they've done them. And they put this out to try and give him some money towards the whole cancer charity thing. And for that reason, you know, you can't sort of knock them. And I wouldn't knock Testament because I love them as people. I think Chuck Billy's a hero of mine. But it's just karaoke shit. And he's not well. And he doesn't know how to perform his own songs on that album. But the novelty of it just sounding a bit different to start with, yeah, I did like it back in the day. But by now, all these years on, all these modern albums on, I am up to fucking there with guttural Testament.
Right on. Which leads us to, there's a big gap. Obviously, Chuck is going through some shit. We go from 99, The Gathering, to 2008, the formation of Damnation, which finds Alex Skolnick and Greg Christian, the two original members, returning. And on drums, we have Paul Bostoff. Go ahead. What do you think about formation of Damnation, Mike?
When this come out, I remember all the sort of young guys in my town, all like sort of 10, 15 years younger than me, were all raving on about... I picked the wrong one. Where's it at? They were raving on about it. It got Album of the Year in Metal Hammer and things like that. And I was just like, they had a video for the song More Than Meets the Eye. If ever there was an anticlimactic chorus and phrase, it's more than meets the eye. It's just doesn't say anything. It's just totally anticlimactic. Now, at this point in the career and from here on, Eric is playing a different style of rhythm, and he's got a chokehold on the sound. So I don't blame any drummer that comes in and he's very, very busy around the kit. And it's like the sound that Hoglan does, you know, everything's triplets. He doesn't know simplicity, or if he will do, of course he will. But I always think that Eric thinks to himself, well, I've got Jane Hoglan in the band, so I need
Actually, this is Paul Bostoff. Anyway.
Oh, well, okay. What I mean is, I haven't got the limitation of Louis in the band. I can get more out of the guy sitting behind me, and I'm going to utilize him. And consequently, all these guys, they're just going around. Everything's triplets. Everything's double bass pedals. And it's just the Testament failed to me now. Like, they used to have 4 wheels all the same size. And now the rhythm section is these great big wheels at the back, and ones at the front that aren't a match. And it's just shit. I hate this era. For me, I've got this. Nothing appeals. A spoiler alert. This group of albums is, I could pick them up and interchange them all the time. I've got them at 8, 9, and 10. I've got Brotherhood, Formation at 10 because I think it's the worst of these, and that's purely because of my own feelings about when they changed to this style and things like that. And, I've never cared to try and go back and get my head around it, because every time I do, I just think he's playing for these type of drums, so that leaves the drummer nowhere to go. And consequently, Chuck doesn't have as many places to go. So everything's just, compressed into this wall of noise that they try to create. And this lower register vocal, people always say, oh, Chuck Billy's still got it and all that. But this is easier. This isn't as hard as singing as he used to. This growling is not difficult for people like him. He's older, so his voice naturally goes lower.
Yeah. Right on. Darcy.
Well, I got a different point of view on this one.
Me too.
So, 9 years go by as far as recording a studio album. Paul Bostaff is a highlight on this album. He crushes on here. Not his first stint with the band. He actually was on Return to the Apocalyptic City, but he is less robotic than Gene Hogland. Gene Hogland plays on the next three that we'll talk about eventually, but I couldn't have been happier in 2008 to hear this album. Probably the highlight on this album for me is probably the heaviest track, is the title track, The Formation of Damnation. There is a breakdown in there that I just absolutely just like this. It's like the drums kind of slow down, then they speed up, and then Chuck goes right into his I will fight relentlessly. And what else we got on here? We got The Evil Has Landed, so you got a 9/11 song.
That's actually okay, that song. I don't mind that song.
It's like one of the least cheesiest 9/11 songs. That song that Iced Earth did, When the Eagle Cries. Oh my God. That's such a shitty cheese ass song. Anyway, go ahead.
The intro for The Glory of, I like it, built into More Than Meets the Eye, which I love that track. Persecuted Won't Forget, another highlight. Killing Season, and the last track, Leave Me Forever. That is a different type of tune for Testament, but it's good. It's heavy. Got this at number 5. And this is the first time they use this. You'll know this artist. What's the name? Elran Kantor.
Yeah.
Well, he does the next 3 too. So
he's awesome.
Yeah. He did the latest Creator album too.
And Halloween.
You're right. Yeah. Number 5.
Alan.
Let's see. Marty, one quick item of bookkeeping, please. What did you have The Gathering ranked at? I missed that.
Number 3.
Number 3. Okay. Yes. My wife needed something real quick, so getting caught back up here. All right. Formation of Damnation. I'm of two minds here. Both Darcy and Mike have made some good points. As far as my rankings go, I've already used 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I've already used 9, 10, 11, and 12. So yeah, this next chunk of albums is very much just in the middle. It's going to be the middle 4 slots. And like Mike said, there is an interchangeability issue that comes up as you go through these albums. And these albums are actually spaced out on a 4-year step every time too. And they've got the same cover artist as you guys were just talking about. They're not bad albums, but it does, I get Mike's point. It really does start to feel like you can mix and match songs from these albums, and unless you really have a good ear for the differences in the production, or you can absolutely pick out, which rhythm section is on a song, it could be hard to know which album some of these tracks come from. Formation of Damnation. I did not hear it in 2008. I didn't hear it in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, or 20. I think I got around to it in 21. Just never picked up on this album. Marty and I actually covered it on an early episode of the Wednesday Album Club. I picked it because I had never heard it. And so I was like, sure, let's listen to this and see what people think of it. It is not a bad album. Some people talk about, The Gathering being kind of Testament's return to form. I think The Gathering has kind of got its own sound. Like we talked about, it has a bit more of that, aggro thing going on than other albums. For me, this is the album where they really just kind of went back to basics. It's like, okay, give the people what they want. Probably doesn't factor in as a coincidence that this is where they get back on a bigger label. It's like, hey guys, we'll get you some distribution and better contracts, but can you just play the old stuff that people still talk about? Yeah, we could do that. So certainly not a bad album. It made a good impression. I like it in general, but it's very much the kind of album I give a B to, where it's just like, fine album, nothing wrong with it, but at the same time, there's not a ton of tracks that stand out. If I was putting together like a best of Testament playlist, I'd probably want something from this album, but I really don't know right off the bat what it would be. It's like, I'd have to kind of probably play it a couple of times again to try to figure out what would be the track. Even in the notes here, I couldn't really identify one going back to it this time around. So it's a solid enough album, but yeah, it kind of is a little bit lacking in standouts. As such, I've got it at number 7. Still gave it a grade of B. There are other albums from this block that I think have some better individual songs, which is why I've got this one a little bit lower than some of them we're about to get to. But Marty, sounds like you're pretty positive on this one, and as I recall, you liked it a lot when we did it on the album club. So what are your thoughts on it now, a couple of years later?
Well, thanks for picking me up a copy of it. I've
welcome.
Always had a dub of it, so it was good to actually get a copy of it. But for me, this is an epic career climax album. All the essential OG members return and deliver what I think should have been the proper follow-up to Practice What You Preach. This sounds like Testament back on track, having taken all the years of experimentation to heart, and seemingly made it one with the true Sonic Testament brand. Skolnick sounds so elevated and alive in his playing. Very interesting riffs and song construction. Great album. Bostov is on fire. He's such a powerful and creative player. He adds a lot of color and force to this record. More Than Meets the Eye, I put one of their best songs, ? It's up there for me. The Evil Has Landed, a non-cheesy 9/11 song. Insane doubled solo on that song. For me, this might be crazy, but I put it number 2. I like this record. I was quite impressed with it when it came out. I listened to it a lot, and we did the album club on it. It still holds up for me. I think it's longish, but it's not offensive. All the songs are solid for me. I like the production. It feels like an older Testament record. Like I said, it feels like
It does.
the spiritual successor to Practice What You Preach. It's got more life and fire than Souls of Black did. I don't know, man. I think it's a really solid record, and it sounds like Testament, where there's been some records here and there that, even The Gathering, as great of a record as it is, it's pretty modern. This here seems like they're like, okay, we're going back to what we're good at and what we know. But yeah, number 2 for me. I don't even feel bad about it. Which leads us to Dark Roots of Earth. Came out in 2012. It still has Greg Christian on bass and Alex Skolnick on guitar. It's a 51-minute long album. It peaked at number 12 on Billboard Top 200. Mike, what did you think of this one? I know you already kind of said what you think about it. But.
Yeah. Just think about the first song, Rise Up. So you in the bridge, you've got, when I say rise up, you say war. When I say rise up, you say war. And then the chorus is rise up, war. Rise up. I mean, how fucking repetitive can you get?
It's stupid. There's some bad lyrics on this record.
It's proper knuckle dragging, leave your fucking brain in the parking lot when you go to the gig. And then Native Blood, all right. I get it.
That's my favorite song on the album, actually.
Dark Roots, the title track's okay. I don't mind that. My favorite one, right, is A Day in the Death. That's the standout song for me. The worst one for me that I can remember, because these, it tails off at the back for me. My interest just does not keep me interested. But when they start doing true American hate, it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm no longer the target audience for this band. This is really fucking Neanderthal knuckle dragon shit. And I just think, oh, well, I don't suppose you can like every band all the time, like for the whole career. I feel a bit like, like if your son or daughter or something was in an accident or a near miss, and you went, oh my God, and you'd be all like shook up and all that. But an uncle that rarely sees them would go, yeah, it'll be fine, it's nothing. Because you're so passionate and you love that little person more than your uncle that kid's uncle does. It impacts on you. And I'm so fucking like gutted by what Testament are, because I loved them so much. That's why I'm like, when I said at the start of the video I was passionate, I meant I fucking hate them just as much as I love the early stuff. You know what I mean? I bought these way after they came out, because I just felt guilty for not giving them a fair chance. And I have tried, and I just think, fucking hell, it's just nothing to me. It's just, So I would put this, it's on my list at number 9.
All right. Darcy.
Well, that's one higher than I got it at. I got mine at number 10.
Cool cover art.
Yeah. So this is the first one last one with Greg, and first one with Gene. So I forgot to mention too, I actually saw Testament for the second time in 2008. They actually opened up for Judas Priest on the Nostradamus tour. So kind of a weird pairing too, but Paul Bostaff was in the band at that point, man, and he crushed it live too. But anyways, on to this one. Yeah, I got this one at number 10. I just feel from Formation of Damnation to this is a really a drop off. Songwriting quality. Rise Up isn't bad. Native Blood is a good track. Probably my favorite track. Dark Roots of Earth, the title track's good. And Mike mentioned another one that I like, A Day in the Death. But yeah, there's like side C of this. Like side D is a cover. There's some covers on here, but it's not part of the actual album. But side C is just a bunch of filler. But yeah, there is my number 10.
Alan.
This one, yeah, again, I agree. It's a step down from Formation of Damnation. I've got it ranked one lower at number 8. I don't hate the album. I never remember much about the album. And this is where that interchangeability starts to become an issue. It's like, if you named a song from this album, would I remember it came from this album? Probably not. I would be guessing to some extent.
Yeah.
There's a couple that I like. Now, I actually like a couple of them towards the end of the album, like Throne of Thorns and Last Stand for Independence. Like, okay, the album at least ended on a fairly decent note. And it's not that the album's bad, but it is becoming samey here, but less so. It's like, okay, Formation of Damnation, they went back, they got, a strong formula. Here they're rolling out the same formula, but with songs that, don't stick as well. And again, I have a little trouble keeping the songs from Formation of Damnation straight. So when I'm saying these are even less sticky in my brain, we're going in the wrong direction a little bit. Not a bad album, but not one that I will reach for much. And when I play it, it's very much one of those albums I play it one time. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it sounded like. Okay, it's a Testament record. And then I put it back on the shelf. It does not get repeated plays. Marty, what do you think of this one?
Well, this is the first time this week I ever heard this record. I've never seen it in a store. It's never come across my radar. I've never picked it up. So it was interesting to check it out. I think Chuck is too loud in the mix. But the album itself, I think, is musically proficient and at times exciting. Testament remains true to their legacy while getting heavier, at times faster, and showing off some of their rock influences as well. The lyrics on here is the problem. It's cheap. There's a Mike, you're completely right. And I can see as, a non-American looking in at the lyrics on this, it's kind of like that's kind of what the world thinks about America, the knuckle dragging. I mean, I get it. And I felt kind of this, I'm there's like a pseudo cheesy political, which they've done on occasion, but the album feels too long. It sounds like songs like Rise Up, Man Kills Mankind, and True American Hate feeling a touch too preachy, like an old guy getting into patriotism for the first time type of thing. It is what it is. And if you're into that stuff, cool. That's great. Awesome. But yeah, it's a little off-putting for myself. Not that I'm not patriotic, it's just that, I don't know, man. It's weird. I get what you mean, Mike. Favorite for me is Native Blood for the feeling and the vocal melody lines over the blast beats. It's a very, very cool song. Best song on the album for me. I didn't spend a lot of time with this record, but I thought the music on it was really good. The lyrics bugged me a bit, and I don't know. If I saw it used, I'd probably buy it because I have all the rest of them other than Demonic. But which leads us to Dark Roots of Earth is number 9 for me. Which leads us to 2016, 4-year gap, Brotherhood of the Snake. Gene Hoglan, Steve DiGiorgio, the rhythm section. It peaked at number 20 on the Billboard Top 200. Wow. Well, there's less people buying records, so if there's some sort of a dent on it, it actually clocks. This album is 45 minutes, 26 seconds long. Mike, what'd you think of Brotherhood of the Snake?
It just seems like for years and years and years that they're not progressing. They're not even progressing with their artwork. It's the same guy, the same sort of theme. And it now seems as if it's almost their output would suggest that the band is just a sideline, an afterthought, and Chuck Billy's into property flipping now. And it feels like they know what to do to sell 100,000 records to 100,000 hardcore fans every 4 years, and it gives them an excuse to tour and sell T-shirts, and they're on autopilot. They don't really. They've done this for that long, and when people say about performances and stuff, it's like this is all they know from being very, very young. It doesn't take anything out of them to do these performances. They're not great. They'd only be great for people that's never done it. So I don't hold any sort of store in performances on it on any of these latter day albums. This is the last one that bored the tits off me, because you'll notice there's no room only higher up for the newest album. This is just another interchangeable Testament album that I don't care about, but because I can remember sort of Stronghold and The Pale King and the title track, then it comes. I mean, these positions for these three clustered together is just random, to be honest. They could change next year. So I have it at number 8, but without really any justification, to be quite honest. Just that's where it's, by default, that's where it's got to go.
All right. Darcy.
My number 11. I think this is. I was disappointed in this one. Especially the lyrical content for some of this is absolute crap.
Yeah, he slipped. He slipped as lyricist.
You got a song called "Cannabusiness," and the lyrics are
stupid,
brutal.
Yeah, y'all smoke pot. Cool.
The Numbers Game, another brutal track. Blackjack, another shit lyric, and even shittier is Born in a Rut. So the highlights for this album for me, the Stronghold. Strongholds is the heaviest, sharpest riff. I enjoy that one. The Pale King is good, but I think even the title of the album, they probably just threw a dart at the dartboard and let's hit one of these and let's make a painting, because I don't know. This to me is the worst of the reformation of these guys since 2008. And this every 4 year thing, yeah. And you know what? We still have one coming this year, and they signed for 2 more after that. So we still got 2028 and 2032 of Testament albums with probably the same formula, even though, well, I'll talk about that next one in a bit. But this is my number 11, just above Demonic.
Alan.
Yeah, good points. And this is where a band like Testament kind of can't win, because Mike's exactly right. The albums through this stretch are very similar. They're kind of cookie cutter. They're doing the same thing over and over, and wheeling it back out, just slightly rearranged every few years, right on schedule. And a lot of people, are not keen on these albums because of that. At the same time, if they were to do something, to really mix it up and change it and go off in a different direction, you'd have people howling at the moon, just like, that doesn't sound like Testament. You can't do that. What the fuck? Where did this influence come from? Where's my old school we talk about lots of bands that have this issue when they kind of play it safe like this and just kind of keep giving the older fans the same kind of thing over and over. There's a group of people that'll eat that up, and there's a group of people that get very bored with it. But if they start mixing it up, the two sides just change places. Some folks will be like, oh yeah, look at how fucking brutal they were on Demonic, and the rest of us are like face palming, thinking like that's not even a good Testament record. The bands just can't win sometimes. There is a catch-22 here. If they stay the same and consistent, they will piss some people off. And if they change their sound up, they will piss a lot of people off. So I don't know what you do. I don't know. Maybe there's a point where these bands are supposed to just retire and not make more music or something. I don't know how you avoid that trap other than just walking away from it. I'm not sure. Anyway, on to thoughts on this album. I don't mind this one as much as some of the other albums. Yes, it's become very formulaic and stuff. With this one, at least compared to like Dark Roots of the Earth, there are more songs on this one I remember. I can look at the track list of this one and be like, okay, yes, Stronghold, The Pale King, Seven Seals, it's like Neptune's Spear. It's like, okay, I kind of remember those songs. If you put those songs on, it would take me a minute, be like, oh yeah, I know this song, and I know it's on Brotherhood of the Snake. So the Cannabusiness one is kind of fun in a stupid way, if that's allowed. I don't know. So because I've got this one ranked 5th, it's still kind of one of those, samey, interchangeable B grade kind of albums, but it at least does have a handful of songs that have stuck with me rather than just becoming a bit of a blur like Dark Roots did, and like Formation can on some occasions too. So I'll put it fifth, which seems a little high, but it's Testament. It sounds like Testament. It's what a lot of us want Testament to sound like, but then we also get tired of Testament sounding like this over and over. Sometimes you just can't win. Marty, what do you make of Brotherhood of the Snake?
When I bought this when it came out, I listened to it twice and went, man, it's just too long of a slog for me. Putting it on this week, it feels a bit more compact. Again, I like the music on it. Darcy's right. The Chuck is in a rut here with the lyrics for sure.
And having a song on here called "In a Rut"
Stuck in
is
a rut, yeah.
the irony. Just,
yeah.
You can't write this stuff.
No,
but Chuck can.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing Steve's bass poking out from under the mix. His playing rules, yet he seems like an underappreciated weapon in a band like Testament.
Yeah, exactly.
You hear him raging in Death. You hear him crushing it in Sadist. And then he's like just kind of filling in the low end, linking up with the rhythm section, doing what he's supposed to do as a bass player. Maybe that's why he likes this. It's a solid gig. He plays a lot. He's touring the world still and getting paid. Gene brings effortless speed and mature fills / rhythmic ideas to the band. Of course, the atomic clock, his timing's perfect. Solid production and songwriting that navigates effortlessly between classic Testament ideas and their heavier modern era creatively. Favorite tracks, title track, Seven Seals, great flow and guitar work. Stronghold is cheesy but energetic with gang yells. My least favorite is Can of Business. I know y'all smoke pot. And it's just, it's getting finally legalized in America. Great, but, I don't know, man. I guess I get tired of hearing about it.
It seems a bit sad to rejoice that it's 60, doesn't it?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Which leads us to their latest.
Where did you rank it, Marty?
Oh, shit. I'm sorry. Number 8.
Okay.
I think I'm the same with Mike on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the same with him on Dark Roots 2, number 9. I think we've all kind of lumped them in the same point here. But brings us to Titans of Creation. We still have Gene Hoglan and Steve DiGiorgio on bass.
This is the first pair of albums with a consistent lineup since Souls of Black and The Ritual.
Yep.
This is the first time you've had 2 back-to-back Testament albums with the same lineup in over 30 years, which is kind of nuts.
And I want to talk a minute before we get started on this. This album is 58 minutes long. It's over 58 minutes long. I get it. You start getting to be older. You've been doing this a lot of years. I think you start approaching these new albums as if this could be our last album. You don't know what could happen. Someone could croak. I mean, shit can happen, And I think a lot of these legacy bands are like Metallica. I mean, all these like Overkill, they write too much shit, self-edit. The albums do not need to go over 40 fucking minutes. They don't need to go over 40 minutes. I don't need to hear almost an hour's worth of Testament riffs. They're great. They're good. It's Testament. But come on, man. This isn't the legacy. This isn't Practice What You Preach. It's a slog. Anyway, let's Mike.
The problem with it, I think, Marty, is when you've got a band this far into the career that's been successful, who around them within their organization is going to tell them, just cut back on that, don't do this, I recommend that. And they're just not. And Andy Sneap just probably, because a producer isn't just a knob twiddler, is he? He's an editor of ideas and stuff like that. And I don't know how much editing he does, but it's not enough, is it? And but the thing is, he will have probably worked out that they'll sell 100,000 of an album he doesn't have to put any effort into, and they'll sell 100,000 of an album he sweated blood over in this day and age.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's he going to do? He can fit another 2 or 3 recording sessions in another year's worth of work with someone else and just coast along on autopilot.
I mean, look at it. 58-minute long record. That is the 70s. Look at the 70s. The only time you saw double LPs in the 70s was a greatest hits album or a live album. All records were within the time zone. I'm sure Titans of Creation is a double LP. You know, you have to get up and flip that fucking thing a bunch of times. It's like, I get it. Metallica is surrounded by yes men. Their last album was full of garbage. The album before Hardwired, there's a handful of great songs, but it's a 2 CD set. I mean,
and they do that. Did you know this? Did you know that Hardwired, for every sale of Hardwired, it counts as 2 because there's 2 CDs in it? Did you realize that? So it skews the results when you look it up.
Well, that's probably why they did it then. But I mean, there's so much fat that could be trimmed, and if you cut the fat, you could come up with a good record. And this Titan, anyway, we'll get into Titans here. Mike, what'd you think of Titans of Creation?
Well, I went into this, as you can imagine, after the last 3, thinking, "Oh, do I even care?" But I was pleasantly surprised because to me, there's a few more styles on the table on this album.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I mean, the first song, Children of the Next Level, is a good song, but it's almost 7 minutes long. And they could have got the point across in a lot less time and it's still been great.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's about 3 or 4 songs on here that are over 6 minutes long or thereabouts, and like we've just been saying, they're just too long. But I think there's some good ideas. You've got some slower things. You've got that groovy thing, City of Angels. My favorite song on here is The Healers, which is, I love when the double bass comes in. I'm not opposed to double bass pedals in thrash, but if they're used sparingly, they've got more impact. When you've got triplets on every fill and double bass pedals right the way through entire verses, they lose their impact. And it's a step in the right direction. I just hope that the problem is the new guy coming into the band on the drums already probably feels like he's got to try his level best to live up to Gene's standards as much as he can. So we're probably not going to see much deviation from that style.
Probably not.
And I don't know how obligated they feel to Andy Sneap at this point to keep him on the payroll as well. And they might not want to rock the boat and say, you know what, we're going to go with someone else or whatever. I would love the Judas Priest schedule to their plans and that forced them into going up to just to try and make some, just a few alterations. Get somebody else to do the artwork. Try and give us something different before we're all fucking dead. It's a step in the right direction, and for me, it's number 6, and it's quite comfortably number 6, and that's even above Law, if you remember that. For all its faults, I still think it's number 6.
Right on, Darcy.
I got this one at number 8. This is just below low. So the new guy on drums, his name
Lower.
is Chris Dovis, and he's a much younger guy too. He's going to bring some real energy, I think. I don't think he's going to feel that obligation. That's my personal take on that. I think he's actually going to, he's like the kid's in his 20s. I don't even think he's past 29 years old. So what was I going to say? And as far as Andy Sneap, the only thing he did on this album is mix it. They mostly work with Juan Ortega, and that's who they're working with again. So Andy will just mix it. That's all. That's why I think there's a real improvement on this one over for sure, Brotherhood and Dark Roots. This is my second favorite of the, 2008 till modern day Testament. And Mike touched on this. This one has some really good variety on here. Dream Deceiver, great track. City of Angels, I think it's a Charles Manson song is what it is. I think that's what that's about. But it's a great song. And as far as Alex Skolnick is he's well represented on this album, probably 2 to 3, maybe even 4 writing credits. Symptoms. I think Symptoms, he wrote that one. That's a good track too. But I still got to put this at number 8. And definitely looking forward to the new album. Like Mike said, this one's a step in the right direction. Hopefully this next one, I hope they just don't feel they have to, they're on this 4-year cycle and it's getting, near rush time. I just hope they don't rush it and just put out the same formula, something different.
They're gonna.
Well, this one is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So my number 8.
Alan.
Let's see. I think I've got this one. Yeah, the same place Mike did at number 6. And overall, yeah,
I'll be right back.
It's another Testament album. It's a long Testament album. Marty's right. This one does feel, and it's not that it has any really terrible tracks or anything, but like you were pointing out, Mike, just certain things feel a little too long. Children of the Next Level doesn't need to be quite that long. It just doesn't. And it's kind of weird too, because that ended up being the single that got played a ton on like Sirius XM radio for the album. It's like, and every time they would play, be like, okay, I kind of like this song, but it just keeps going a little too long. So, and at the end of the album, with Catacombs, you've got this 2-minute acoustic-y outro.
Yeah.
Why? Why does that need to be there? It's. I'm not saying it's a bad piece of music, but it doesn't fit the album at all. It doesn't really do anything as an outro. If you had to use it, you put it maybe like in between, after like a couple of aggressive tracks to kind of slow things down and change the pace for a minute before going to the next song. You could, right there is an easy 2 minutes. You just trim off this album and nobody would ever have missed it. So yeah, it's got its issues, but it does have good songs on it. Darcy, you mentioned Dream Deceiver. That's my favorite track on the album. Really good one. So yeah, and Mike, I think you're right. There's maybe a little more different ideas here. They're not varying much, but they're still playing it quite safe. But it does feel like they're trying a little more range of things. But maybe part of that is also just the length of the album. They got more time to fill, so they had room to expand the project a bit. I'm not sure. So yeah, decent album. But for me, yeah, it's still kind of in the same league, as these last few albums. They're all solid enough Testament albums, but yeah, they've definitely got the template now, and I don't mind any of these albums. I own all 4 of these albums, but at the same time, picking one over the other, it's like, well, there's just a lot of. You can say, if you enjoy it, you say, great, they're consistent. And if you don't like it, you say, they've gotten boring and stale. And both points of view are right, which is a weird way to say it. But yeah, there's, times I can appreciate that Testament hasn't gone off the rails and tried to do something ridiculous. But at the same time, yeah, it would be nice if they could get out of that rut a little bit. There's just these bands have such little room to maneuver in at this point in a career with a band like Testament. You keep playing it safe and people get bored and they go listen to someone else. You put your hat on backwards and get the lady from Spirit Box to start doing guest vocals or something, and everyone's going to lose their shit and not buy.
Or David Grohl, he's on everything. He guests on everything. Get David Grohl on there.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, your 100,000 record sales will be 50,000 record sales because everybody will write you off as just posing and bandwagon jumping. So yeah, it's not a bad album, but it's just another Testament album, a little better than the other, maybe. So I've got it at 6. It could have been 5. It's really close on that. But it's got that same general vibes. So Marty, your thoughts on Titans of Creation?
I mean, I kind of said a few things at the start of this album, but I think a band like this, they went through their period where they were trying to reinvent the band and rediscover themselves, find themselves. They finally did, and they got it figured out and sorted out. So I expect the band to coast from here on out with a few alterations here and there. Mike is right. I think this album, it sounds like Testament. They're trying to do some things here and there, like Dream Deceiver. It's got an old school metal vibe to it. I think that's a cool song because it's got an old heavy metal vibe to it.
It reminds me of Scorpions a little bit.
100% agreed. They always have, they toy with the rock thing on occasion. I mean, obviously covering Aerosmith songs and whatever the hell else they're doing, but it worked well on that song. Children of the Next Level, interestingly complex track, hard hitting, an eye-opening leadoff track, even though it is 6 minutes and 13 seconds long. And it's cool subject matter. They're covering the Hale Bop Comet cult that killed themselves.
Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate, that's right.
Yeah, still cool topical songs.
Cool
Story
topical songs.
Yep.
You got to do that. And obviously, or if not, you end up writing an album's worth of, how it's cool they can go to the store and buy weed. I don't know. I still think I do like this record. Devin sent me this record. Thank you, Devin. You're not watching tonight, but thanks for sending it to me. It's a good record. I liked it the minute he sent it to me. It's too fucking long, man. Almost an hour's worth of Testament. God damn it. Cut some of this shit off. And yeah, the next album is probably gonna be another long ass album. They've had a bit of time. They've toured, they've done festivals, they've been a busy band, which they are a busy band. They played Traverse City, which is my town, which teenage me couldn't believe I was seeing Traverse City less than a mile from my house. I couldn't believe it. Same with Anthrax. Anthrax came here too. Couldn't believe I was seeing Anthrax. These bands have made it because they are willing to go to the hard places sometimes. And we're 5 hours north of Detroit. We're not an easy stop on their run. So it's cool that they did that. But yeah, for me, Titans of Creation is number 7. Number 7 on the list. Yeah. It's a solid record. And I think all the records leading up, they haven't really put out a turd record. Even Demonic. It's at the end of my list, but still has its merits.
It kind of ties in. Zach had a comment a minute ago I thought might be a nice one to kind of wrap this up with. He mentioned, I can't scroll back to it easily, but he said, basically, all that may be true, but, Testament still basically, destroys almost any other legacy thrash band out there. What do we think of that? How does Testament today measure up against Exodus or Death Angel or any of the other veteran thrash bands that are still going? Do we agree with Zach?
I think they're all playing the same. They're all playing the same sort of game. I mean,
a lot of them are.
Death Angel are putting the same thing out year in, year out. Well, whatever year.
Or Exodus.
I don't know if these sort of bands should have these length of careers, to be honest. But I'm really bad at. For me, music is entertainment, and I want to be excited. And I don't understand when someone goes, "Nah, it's not bad with an album," because I think, what's the point in wasting my life on something that doesn't excite me? I put The Legacy on before. I've heard that 1,000 times for 35 years. That still has the power to genuinely excite me. Nothing after 1990 has excited me at all. So I just kind of think, well, you know what? I'll cherish what I get excited by and I'll move on. And you know, for me, I mean, to be honest, the writing's probably on the wall for the rest of my Testament collection, because I'm over that whole, oh, well, I bought the last one, I might as well buy the next one thing. I don't give a shit. I'd rather have 100 albums that got me excited than 1,000 albums that didn't move me at all. And so I'm a very difficult person to please with things. And the metal community seems far happier just collecting the next piece of artwork with 10 more songs on that is roughly in the same vein as what the last one was.
You're not wrong. You're not fucking wrong.
And I thankfully don't play that game. And I've dabbled, and it didn't sit well with me very long. And I really don't play that game now. So, you know, I don't begrudge them a career, and you know,
fuck you, Simon.
And it's, you know, I don't. But there's only, we get the odd surprise about with long living thrash albums. Like I really enjoy the last Megadeth album. To be honest, I didn't go into it expecting to, but it was a great surprise that I really enjoy that. I loved the last Possessed album and stuff like that. And I'm grateful if I can get one in 20 of this style of music now.
What do you think, Darcy, on the same topic?
Well, I know Mike doesn't, like you said, he doesn't play that game, but I still look forward to new albums by, I do play that game to a certain extent.
I do too.
You know, even the new Accept album, it's a good album, but it's just the same old Accept, that same as the past five. Well, I shouldn't even say that. It's just a good album. It's nothing shocking. Mike and I were talking the other day about just dead out surprise, out of nowhere albums, and they're hard to find. They're, you know, like 2019 Possessed. I mean, I still love that album. I think that's killer. Todd Latoure's solo album, that one kind of came out of nowhere. I still love that one. But there's a lot of just, you know.
So just to bounce the question back to both of you two, because you've just said, Marty, that you do too. Alan hasn't sort of committed himself yet. But if that's the case, why do you play that game? That's the mystery to me. Because I wonder, for myself, is it not time I looked in other areas for other styles of music that I haven't tapped into yet to see if there's excitement there? I might be missing something, trying to just tread water with the same safe style of music. Maybe it's time I look elsewhere. And why would you prefer to, or why is it that you look forward to something every year when it's like, doesn't get you excited? It's like getting 10 blowjobs off 10 ugly bastards instead of one off a beautiful wife.
Yeah, but you could turn the lights off and I'll just leave it at that. It's,
you know what? This one still excites me. There was nothing wrong with this album.
No, but what I'm saying is,
Darcy left the lights on for that one.
Assuming you don't, what makes it okay year in, year out to just get another one and another one and another one and let them just mount up? What drives that?
Can I answer this? I
Go ahead.
look at a band like Overkill. That band ruled my world when I was a teenager. I loved Overkill. I loved everything they put out. I bought everything they came out. Although I don't have their latest album yet, I will get it. I always get it, and I always give them a chance because of how much I loved them when I was younger. It's always, I'm a slave to the nostalgia. As Simon so eloquently stated, tell me about Dark Throne. I love Soulside Journey. I love the early black metal records. I've hated the last 3 records, and I told myself I'm never buying another one. But I listened to the news track that came, or the first single that came off the new record. I'm like, oh, it sounds a bit better. Like they're trying. I bought it. I'm a slave to habit. I'm a slave to my nostalgia, and like someone say, what do you want these bands to do? They're doing what they should do. They've built themselves a career. This is all they've ever done. I don't expect them to say, fuck this band. I'm going to go get a job at the pizzeria down the street. I'm going to go work for UPS now. I'm an old fuck. I'm going to run around in the brown oven all day and bust my ass for $25 an hour. I don't expect that to happen. They're doing what they need to do. They're doing what they've always done. I respect them for the fact that they continue to do it. Is it always great? Is it always good? No. But I'm always going to eventually give them a shot, like you did with the new Megadeth.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you never know. There might be an Overkill. They put out some really solid records. I find myself, even though that I like it, I'm like, wow, this is a good record. I listen to it for a week. It hits the rack and I forget about it. It's just gone. It's gone. It's sucked into the void. And it's like, it's not fair. And part of the reason is there's so many bands. There's so many bands. There's so much new music. You get a little bit older, you make a little bit more money. You can feed that addiction. You know, the collector, we talk about collector scum. It's a thing. It's totally a thing. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I'm closer to Mike's position on this thing. You know, there are certainly bands I love, that I'll follow for a while. But if I feel like a band is slipping, I will jump ship, and you can say I'm, not a dedicated fan or whatever, but I have a limited amount of space for records. I have a limited amount of money to spend on records, and I have a limited amount of time to listen to records. It's like Mike said, if a band is not really doing it for me over a couple of albums, why am I going to give you more of my time and my money and my space when, you put out one bad album? Okay, it's not the end of the world. But you put out a couple of clunkers in a row, and it's just like, there's something better out there I could listen to. Mike's exactly right. But people listen differently. There are some people that are going to be dedicated fans to a band no matter what they put out. And that's okay. Some people, connect that way. I've had friends who, to this day will say, I don't care what Metallica releases, I'll buy it. One of my friends jokes, she's like, James Hetfield could fart into a microphone for 30 minutes and I'll be there on the day it's released. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, you do that. I wouldn't give you $10 for every Metallica album made in the last 30 years. I don't want them. They don't enter. I just don't like them. I've heard them. I give them a chance, but there's very, very little. There's a little here and there, but not much. Like Mike said, I get bored with that stuff, and it's like, there's a band out there somewhere releasing something that I haven't heard that actually would get me interested and intrigued and excited, and I need to go ferret around in the underground and find what that is. And I tend to think of it in terms of like, there are people who you stick to a band or you want the complete discography. You're kind of, going deep, you're staying in this one place and you're going all the way through every layer of it. And, that whole thing perfectly. And then there's other folks that, instead want to go wide. They're not going to stay in one place and drill down. They're going to, go sideways across the horizon. They're the ones that are going to know, hundreds and hundreds of bands, but they may only know a few things by each of those bands. They may not know full discographies, or they may listen to a few albums and then, kind of lose track of them. I tend to be a little bit more of the go sideways kind of personality when it comes to that stuff. With veteran bands like this, now you're right, Marty. What should they do? What do we want them to do? Well, if they change their style, people will freak out. It won't work for them. It would be a horrible idea. But if they just keep doing the same album over and over, there's only so many ways to rearrange that. And I think some genres have more trouble with this than others. It's a discussion for another time. But I think thrash paints itself into a corner more so than, say, black metal. Other styles, it's not unique to thrash. That there's only so many ways you can put those riffs together and songs and without really losing the formula and doing something different. So there's a point where maybe these weren't styles that were meant to last 40 years.
And thrash really didn't last. Did it even go 10 years?
I mean, it's still
the heyday of it. It wasn't. It was like a hot.
That's true for a lot of these genres. But then these bands are still here. We just described the last 4 Testament albums as being a return to form in terms of kind of like what they were doing early on. So the genre is still there, and there's still a market for it. And if people enjoy it, that's fine. Again, I don't really mind any of these recent Testament albums. It's just that they all feel kind of similar. So. Yeah, I feel bad for bands in that situation because you are damned if you do, damned if you don't. No, you're not going to go reinvent your career at 60. You're going to take flack no matter what you do, and so you're just going to have to do, I guess, what you like. You can't please everybody, so do what you like, and if it's working for you, you're enjoying it, and you can make an okay living at it. Hey, you're in good shape, and don't worry about the folks who decide to jump off your particular catalog and go look for something else. They'll find something they like. Your more dedicated fans that want to, again, kind of go deep on that one band, they'll stick with you and they'll keep buying your stuff.
There's a sad reality here that we didn't touch on, and Ben maybe reminded me of this. Saxon has been putting out some really solid records. True. But the sad reality is I just seen a thing someone posted this week that Saxon just canceled their European tour due to lack of ticket sales. There's a problem when you've been doing it for so long. A band like Saxon, I don't care how good they are, and they are still putting out some good stuff, some solid records for a bunch of old farts. The fact is that the younger crowd is not really discovering Saxon. It takes a minute to work your way back to Saxon. Mm-hmm. Your crowd is old guys our age or older.
And we don't go to concerts as much.
We don't go to concerts as much. We're dying off. We're sick. We're fat. We're old. We're whatever. It's kind of the reality of it. I mean, Saxon, before I was into Saxon and UFO played at the place that Testament did up the road, a mile down the road. I didn't go. I kicked myself. I was told there was like 15, 20 people there. It's a big place.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, Saxon come walking out on stage and they're like, oh, okay.
The other thing is the price as well when you do get there. And, I mean, the last gig I went to see Frozen Soul and Creeping Death a few months ago, and it was it was £45, which is about $50 thereabouts, $52 for a Frozen Soul t-shirt. I mean, they're on the way up, and I like them, but they're nobody to be charging $50 for a t-shirt. Yeah,
that's nuts. That's just the shit without even the ticket. That's not the beer. That's not the gas to get there. It
was $25 for the CD.
Go ahead.
That's just ludicrous, isn't it? And the guy who runs the venue put on Facebook, because he's always trying to do marketing through Facebook, and he's saying stuff like, what's preventing you from coming out on a Tuesday night to watch Frozen Soul or whoever, And if someone says, oh, I had to work.
They all do.
Right. If someone says I had to work and I couldn't do it, or I broke my leg and I couldn't get out of the fucking chair, he'll reply and go, all right, well, hopefully you'll get to the next one then, because it was really good and blah, blah, blah. When somebody like me goes, what the fuck are you doing charging 50 quid for the t-shirt for, you greedy cunt? He doesn't answer that.
Yeah.
Fuck that. I'm not answering that. Bring back the guy with the broken nail. Do you know what I mean? Fuck off.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just at a Little River Casino, Manistee, Michigan last weekend. Took my kid to a record show, and we were walking out, and TJ met me down there. He's like, "Oh, look, Queensryche is coming here in July." I'm like, "Ooh, I could take Parker to that." I got home and started looking up ticket prices. $93 fucking dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's about an hour drive. It'd be perfect. It's an awesome, nice, clean casino.
Yeah.
My kid would like it. I would like it. But I'm like, 93 times 2 plus t-shirts. I'm like, fuck, man.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't need to. I like Queensryche. I'm late to Queensryche. I don't have that nostalgic pull for Queensryche.
I mean,
I hear
easily,
Todd Latore is doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you're easily looking at. I mean, yeah, without even trying, you're looking at about a $400 outing for just you and your kid to see
and a
Queensryche
hotel
without Jeff Tate.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you need a hotel for the night, then yeah, you're looking at over $500
$500
to see a Tateless Queensryche
Yep.
for 2 people.
It'd be
Over
just me
$500.
continuing to get my kid into metal, but he's there
Yeah.
already, so I don't need to. He's
Yeah.
looking at. He's online all the time. He's like, summer vacation's coming up, Dad. I'm trying to find. Can we go to New York City? I'm like, no. Veto.
Yeah.
But
The other
I mean,
thing
it's
about
fine.
going to these old gigs, these legacy acts as well, quite frankly, is there's nothing to see when you get there. I mean, I seen Death Angel on the comeback tour for The Art of Dying. They were the best band I'd ever seen at the time. The energy was off the charts. They absolutely had something to prove with that performance back in 2004. Went to see them on the Bass Strikes Back tour with Exodus and Testament, and they just walked pacing around. Marcos Aquida didn't have the energy he used to have, and the bass player, whoever he is, he's just trying to replicate Cliff Burton with a foot on the monitor and staring out with the bass and the flared pants on, and it's like, yeah, we seen that 40 years ago, mate. There was nothing to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So when you're spending this chunk of money as well, it's not like you're going to be blown away.
all these old guys are banking on the fact that their fan base grew with them, and they're all old and established and have the money to throw at a night out that costs you $200, $300, $400 fucking dollars.
Yeah.
And
Some do, but
some do.
don't.
But you're touring America. I would think you'd want to get as many metalheads in as you can. It's different than Europe. Europe is smaller. It's got more of a metal fan base than we do. We're spread out here. We're spread out.
Yep.
But I don't know. We kind of got a little bit off topic, but I guess it all kind of circles back around. Anybody have anything to add? Darcy, do you have something coming up on the channel that you want to talk about before we jump?
No, nothing major. I got gonna do a updated Judas Priest ranking down the line here in a couple weeks, and maybe just an update on some of the purchases that I've made. But yeah, not a whole lot.
How about you, Mike? What you got coming up?
Nothing to be quite honest with you. I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
Well, it was a fun stream we had a week or so ago. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I still have an interest in doing videos, but my ideas tend to just come at me while I'm driving to work or something in the car. Like, oh yeah, I think when I get a free day, I'll make a video on that. I don't tend to know until when you see a video from me. Chances are I've only just thought of it.
Right. How about you, Alan? What's coming up on Tuesday on Let's Talk Metal?
Well, based on the conversation we've just had, I've got a couple of videos in the bank. I've had a little time to start working on some things, but one of them was looking at like listening and buying habits, bad habits that we tend to get stuck in. And I might actually bump that to the front of the line because it kind of connects in a little bit with what we've talked about here tonight. So maybe we'll get that up and running for Tuesday.
Right on. And show notes for this channel, Heavy Metallurgy. Monday, look for a Riot 5 review from the professor himself. Ben just submitted a Pentagram Chili review, and I'm so behind. I got stuff I want to do. I haven't done yet. I got to get that going. And Wednesday night, we are talking about Crystal Age, Far Beyond, Divine Horizons on the album club.
Oh, yeah. That's a good album.
Mike Seatown picked this. He might or might not be able to make it for the discussion.
He was really good on last Wednesday.
Yeah, it was fun having him. It was cool. He was glad he could make it. And Friday, I believe Sue Verica will be with us, joining us. We'll be talking about
Yep, we'll be doing 70s UFO, the not just the Michael Schenker years, the UFO discography up until Schenker leaves the band after Strangers in the Night.
How many albums is that?
About 8 or 9.
Oh, that's not so bad.
No, it's a good catalog. It's got some it's got some different things, especially the first 2 albums without Schenker are different from what they morphed into once he joined the lineup. But yeah, it'll be a very good discussion. Sue's a longtime UFO fan. Her article on the band is what got me interested in them back in her Metal Maniacs days. So it's going to be a fun discussion for sure. Michael Schenker fans should enjoy it, and anybody who's not that familiar with UFO will be a good chance to get a feel for the band and what albums you might want to check out by them.
I am a noob to all of them, so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
You got a good week ahead of you. It's a pretty easy catalog to work through, and I think you'll enjoy parts of it for sure.
We got an overkill ranking coming up, which may make me want to hang myself.
We do.
Holy shit!
And actually, Darcy, you'll be proud of me. Literally this afternoon, while wrapping up things at the office for a while, I put the finishing touches on my overkill ranking, so I'm ready.
What the hell is wrong with you? My God!
I've been working on this one for a while.
That's 20 albums.
Procrastination is the mother of invention. Don't forget it.
Yeah, but you don't invent it until tomorrow, so it never counts.
Thanks, James. You're too kind. Anyway, cheers, everyone. Thank you again for another great night. We had an awesome time. There's still 96 people in the chat. Thank you so much, everybody. You guys rule.
Thanks everybody.
Yep,
and go check out Darcy 6 Strings 9 Lives, link in the description. Go check out MetalMickey, link in the description. Go check out Let's Talk Metal. We need to start putting that in the description as well. But
that's all right.
Anyway, cheers, everyone. We will see you soon.
Yeah, that way. Check them out.